What if the greatest secrets of human history are not written in books or carved in stone, but are hidden in the darkness far below our feet and deep beneath the waves? For centuries, our understanding of the ancient past has been shaped by the monuments we can see: the pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, the temples of Angkor Wat. Yet, a growing body of evidence suggests that these surface wonders represent only a fraction of the story, with the most astonishing chapters lying concealed in realms that modern technology has only just begun to explore. These are the places lost to time, buried by cataclysms or intentionally hidden by their creators, existing as silent testaments to civilizations that may have been far more advanced than we ever imagined. This is the story of the world's greatest hidden mysteries, the enigmatic structures that continue to baffle and defy scientific explanation. Our planet holds two vast, largely unexplored frontiers that have become the final repositories of these ancient enigmas: the subterranean world and the submerged world. Beneath our feet, a labyrinthine network of natural caves and man-made tunnels stretches for thousands of kilometers, a dark and preserved environment where artifacts can remain untouched for millennia. Under the oceans and seas, a wholly different landscape holds its own secrets, with continental shelves that were once dry land now lying submerged under hundreds of feet of water, potentially hiding the ruins of a lost chapter of human existence. According to marine geologists, these submerged coastlines represent the most promising unexplored territory for finding evidence of early human settlement, particularly from the end of the last ice age. These two realms, one of earth and one of water, are the crucibles where our established historical timelines are being challenged. The conventional narrative of human progress places the birth of complex civilization in the river valleys of Mesopotamia and Egypt around 5,000 years ago. However, the discovery of sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a sophisticated temple complex dating back to 9,600 BCE, has forced a re-evaluation of this timeline. Modern research indicates that organized monumental construction may have preceded agriculture and settled urban life, a radical reversal of previous archaeological models. This raises a profound question. If such advanced structures were being built over 11,000 years ago, what else might have existed that has yet to be found? The archaeological community is slowly coming to terms with the possibility that the roots of human ingenuity stretch far deeper into antiquity than was once believed, hidden in the most unexpected places. The concept of constructing entire habitats underground is not new, but the sheer scale and complexity of some discoveries push the boundaries of what we thought ancient peoples were capable of. Throughout history, humans have utilized caves for shelter, storage, and ritual. But these were typically natural formations adapted for use. The idea of excavating multi-level cities, complete with ventilation shafts, wells, and living quarters for thousands of people, suggests a level of social organization and engineering prowess that is truly staggering. In the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, the soft volcanic tuff rock has allowed for the creation of vast underground networks, with one site in particular, Derinkuyu, revealing a city so large it could have protected 20,000 inhabitants. The very existence of such a place forces us to reconsider the motivations and threats faced by ancient societies, suggesting dangers profound enough to drive an entire population into the earth. Similarly, the exploration of the underwater world has revealed geological formations that bear an uncanny resemblance to human-made architecture, sparking intense debate among scientists. Marine archaeology is a notoriously difficult and expensive field, with strong currents, poor visibility, and the immense pressure of the deep sea presenting formidable challenges to researchers. Despite these obstacles, advanced sonar technology and remote-operated vehicles have begun to map the ocean floor with unprecedented clarity, revealing anomalies that defy easy explanation. One such discovery off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, has divided the scientific community for decades, presenting what appears to be a massive, stepped pyramid-like structure carved from solid bedrock. The implications of such a find, if proven to be artificial, would be monumental, potentially rewriting the history of the entire Pacific region. Geological time operates on a scale that is difficult for humans to comprehend, blurring the lines between what is natural and what is artificial. Over tens of thousands of years, the forces of erosion, tectonic activity, and sedimentation can wear away at rock formations, creating surprisingly regular shapes, flat surfaces, and even right angles that mimic the work of human hands. This is the central argument of geologists who view sites like Yonaguni as a rare but natural phenomenon, an example of Mother Nature's own artistry. Conversely, proponents of the artificial origin theory point to what they interpret as tool marks, precise angles, and organized complexes that could not possibly be the result of random geological processes. This fundamental disagreement lies at the heart of the mystery, a clash between two scientific disciplines looking at the same evidence and arriving at vastly different conclusions. The accelerating pace of technological advancement is the single most important factor in the recent wave of these astonishing discoveries. Ground-penetrating radar, GPR, allows archaeologists to see deep beneath the soil without excavation, revealing the outlines of buried walls, streets, and chambers with stunning accuracy. LIDAR, or light detection and ranging, uses lasers fired from aircraft to strip away vegetation and create detailed 3D maps of the ground, uncovering entire lost cities hidden in dense jungle. For the underwater realm, multi-beam sonar systems can now create high-resolution maps of the seabed, identifying anomalies that would have been missed just a generation ago. These tools are not just helping us find new sites, they are allowing us to re-examine old ones, revealing hidden chambers and connections that were previously unknown. And in doing so, they are forcing us to ask new questions about our past. Our investigation will lead us to the high, arid plains of Cappadocia, Turkey, a landscape defined by its surreal "zero" and, more importantly, by its hidden underworld. Here, beneath the surface, lies a sprawling network of at least 200 underground cities, a fact that remained largely unknown to the wider world until the 1960s. The deepest and most famous of these, Derinkuyu, descends to a depth of over 85 meters and contains at least 18 distinct levels, a feat of ancient engineering that boggles the mind. It features schools, stables, wine presses, and even a chapel, all meticulously carved from the living rock, suggesting it was not a temporary refuge, but a fully functional, long-term subterranean society. The sheer scale of this undertaking, completed with what we consider primitive tools, presents a profound puzzle that archaeologists are still working to solve. Thousands of miles away, across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, we will explore the submerged rock formations off the coast of Yonaguni, the southernmost of the Ryukyu Islands in Japan. Discovered in 1986 by a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake, the main structure, often called the is approximately 120 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 25 meters tall. Its features include what appear to be massive terraces, broad steps, and a large pillar, all with remarkably flat surfaces and sharp 90-degree corners that seem inconsistent with natural fracturing. The debate over its origin is fierce, with some marine geologists insisting it is a natural formation shaped by strong ocean currents, while other researchers point to what they claim are clear signs of human intervention. The site's location and the questions it raises about a potential prehistoric civilization in the region make it one of the most controversial underwater discoveries of the modern era. Beyond these two primary locations, a pattern of similar unexplained submerged structures seems to be emerging around the globe. In the waters near the Greek island of Kefalonia, a "two wall" has been found, while off the coast of Cuba, a sonar image has revealed what some researchers interpret as a grid of streets and buildings covering an area of 2 square kilometers. In India, the submerged ruins of an ancient city are found off the coast of Mahabalipuram, a discovery that appears to corroborate local legends about a city consumed by the sea. These disparate finds, separated by vast oceans and different cultures, hint at a global phenomenon, suggesting that the end of the last ice age may have witnessed not only the rise of sea levels, but also the submersion of a widespread coastal civilization. Could these sites be isolated anomalies, or are they the last remaining fragments of a forgotten chapter of human history that spanned the globe? So we are left with the central, defining questions of our inquiry. Who were these master builders who could carve entire cities from solid rock, and who may have built monuments that now lie beneath the sea? The archaeological consensus, bound by a strict framework of evidence, remains cautious, demanding irrefutable proof before rewriting established history. Yet, the sheer existence of these anomalies challenges us to expand our thinking and to consider possibilities that were once relegated to the realm of fantasy. Are we seeing the work of a lost, globally connected civilization, as some theorists propose? Or are we simply underestimating the ingenuity and capabilities of individual, localized ancient cultures that develop sophisticated skills in isolation? The search for answers is a journey into the very heart of what it means to be human, a quest to understand the true limits of our ancestors' ambitions. Ultimately, our fascination with these submerged and subterranean wonders is deeply rooted in our own desire to understand our origins. We are a species defined by our story, and the prospect that a crucial part of that story is missing is both terrifying and exhilarating. Each new discovery, whether it is a tunnel deep beneath the earth or a wall on the ocean floor, is a potential new page in that story, a clue that could reshape our understanding of ourselves. The mysteries of Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and the countless other sunken temples around the world represent a challenge to the certainty of our knowledge and an invitation to explore the unknown. They remind us that history is not a static, settled account, but a dynamic and ever-evolving puzzle, with many of its most important pieces still waiting to be found in the deep past. Our journey into the deep past now focuses on three distinct categories of enigma, each representing a profound challenge to our established historical narrative. These are the pillars upon which the mystery of a forgotten potential rests, standing as silent witnesses to a chapter of human achievement that has been lost to time. The first pillar is a testament to engineering hidden from the sun, a complete world carved into the earth itself. The second is a controversial monument beneath the waves, whose very origin sparks a fierce debate between geology and archaeology. The third pillar is not a single place, but a global pattern of ruins submerged by the rising oceans, hinting at a widespread phenomenon that reshaped our world. We begin our detailed examination in the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, with the sprawling subterranean complex known as Derinkuyu. This is not a simple cave or a temporary shelter, but a multi-leveled underground city capable of housing an estimated 20,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies. Excavated entirely by hand from the soft volcanic tuff rock, Derinkuyu descends at least 85 meters, with 18 distinct levels identified so far. Its existence was known to locals for centuries, but its true staggering scale was only fully comprehended after a 1963 renovation of a modern home accidentally broke through into a hidden passage. Leading archaeologists consider it the most impressive example of underground engineering in the entire world. Within Derinkuyu, the complexity of the planning is immediately apparent, revealing a society organized for long-term survival deep beneath the surface. A network of narrow, winding tunnels connects vast rooms, including chapels with Byzantine-style frescoes, communal kitchens, stables with ventilation shafts, and even what appear to be schools and workshops. The city features a sophisticated water well system, providing clean water from deep below while protecting the inhabitants from poisoning by surface enemies during a siege. Massive circular stone doors, weighing up to half a ton, could be rolled into place to seal off each level from intruders, creating a formidable, multi-layered defense. This was not merely a place to hide, it was a fully functional, self-sustaining community engineered to endure in complete isolation. The sheer logistics of constructing Derinkuyu are staggering, posing questions that modern engineers still grapple with today. An estimated 100 tons of rock had to be removed to create the city's chambers and tunnels, all accomplished with simple hand tools like picks and shovels. The ventilation system, consisting of dozens of carefully calculated shafts that extend to the surface, would have required a masterful understanding of airflow to prevent the entire city from suffocating. The question of its primary purpose remains a subject of intense scholarly debate. Was it a massive, permanent city, or a colossal refuge built by the Phrygians or later civilizations to escape persecution or invading armies? The answer to this question dictates how we view the engineers who conceived of this impossible world beneath the plains. Our second pillar takes us from the arid highlands of Turkey to the turbulent waters of the Western Pacific, off the coast of Yonaguni-jima, Japan. Here, in 1986, a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake discovered a colossal stone formation lying on the seabed, approximately 25 meters below the surface. The main structure, often called the Yonaguni Monument, is a rectangular platform approximately 120 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 25 meters tall, composed of fine sandstones and mudstones. Its most striking features are a series of massive, flat terraces that step down to a depth of about 27 meters, connected by broad, angular steps and what appear to be carved ramps. Unlike Derinkuyu, whose artificiality is unquestioned, the central mystery of Yonaguni revolves entirely around whether it is a natural formation or a man-made structure. This debate has created a deep schism within the scientific community, pitting marine geologists against historians and underwater archaeologists. Prominent geologists, including Professor Robert M. Schoch of Boston University, argue that the monument's straight edges, flat planes, and right angles are consistent with the natural fracturing of sandstone along horizontal bedding planes. They point to strong tidal currents in the region as the primary force responsible for eroding the rock into its present shape over thousands of years, an entirely natural phenomenon. Conversely, a contingent of researchers, led for many years by the late Professor Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus, firmly believed the site is evidence of a previously unknown prehistoric civilization. Kimura and his supporters point to what they identify as a series of carvings, including what they interpret as a turtle, a dragon-like creature, and ancient hieroglyphs on the monument's surface. They also highlight features like two large post holes, a quote 3 surrounded by a raised border, and a quote 4 or quote 5 with tiered seating, which they argue cannot be explained by natural processes alone. The discovery of what appear to be tool marks on the rock is presented as some of the most compelling, though still debated, evidence for artificiality. The third, and perhaps most far-reaching pillar, is the growing list of other sunken ruins and anomalous underwater structures found scattered across the globe. These sites, often discovered by accident through sonar or by divers, suggest that Yonaguni may not be an isolated anomaly, but part of a much larger pattern. Off the coast of Mahabalipuram in southeastern India, the ruins of an ancient port city were discovered submerged in the Bay of Bengal, a find that appears to directly support local legends dating back over 1,000 years. These ruins include granite walls, steps, and platforms, suggesting a substantial settlement that was consumed by the sea. Even more controversial are the sonar images captured in 2001 in the Gulf of Khambhat, off the coast of northwest India. The images revealed a geometric structure on the seabed, over 8 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, with what appeared to be a grid of streets and buildings. Some researchers claimed carbon dating of artifacts recovered from the site, such as wood and pottery fragments, yielded dates as ancient as 9,500 years, which would place it 5,000 years before the earliest known cities in Mesopotamia. While mainstream archaeology remains highly skeptical of the Gulf of Khambhat findings, they have fueled speculation about an incredibly ancient, lost coastal civilization. Further afield, in 2001, a research team using sonar off the western coast of Cuba detected a series of unusual stone formations at a depth of over 700 meters. The images showed what some geologists interpreted as a series of symmetrical structures, including pyramids, roads, and buildings, covering an area of approximately 2 square kilometers. The sheer depth of this find makes a man-made origin almost impossible according to conventional archaeology, as the area has been underwater for tens of thousands of years. Yet the undeniable geometric regularity of the sonar returns continues to puzzle experts, hinting at a landscape so old it may predate our current understanding of human history entirely. What connects these disparate finds, from Japan to India to the Caribbean, is their location in coastal areas that would have been above water during the last ice age. Approximately 20,000 years ago, at the peak of the last glaciation, global sea levels were over 120 meters lower than they are today. This exposed vast areas of continental shelf around the world, creating prime coastal real estate that would have been ideal for settlement. As the ice sheets began to melt, the seas rose rapidly, submerging these coastlines and potentially any civilizations that flourished there over several millennia. Therefore, Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and the other sunken ruins can be seen as three different types of evidence pointing toward the same radical conclusion. Derinkuyu proves that ancient humans were capable of sophisticated, large-scale engineering projects, even hidden underground. Yonaguni suggests that such skills, or similar ones, may have been applied to monumental structures on coastal plains that are now submerged. The other global sunken sites provide a pattern, a series of data points that indicate this was not a localized event, but a worldwide tragedy of rising seas that erased a coastal chapter of human history. Are we then looking at the remnants of a single, globally connected maritime civilization that existed during the last ice age? A theory often referred to as the "six". Proponents of this idea suggest that a network of advanced peoples, aware of astronomy and engineering, lived on the fertile continental shelves and were wiped out by cataclysmic flooding as the ice age ended. This theory, while lacking definitive proof, provides a convenient explanation for the existence of megalithic structures and shared myths of a great flood found in cultures across the planet. Alternatively, could these sites be the result of independent parallel evolution, where multiple distinct cultures around the world, facing the same environmental pressures of rising sea levels, independently developed advanced construction techniques? This would suggest that human ingenuity in the remote past was far more widespread and sophisticated than we have ever imagined, but that these localized "7" were ultimately and tragically erased by the rising tides. Both scenarios force a fundamental rethinking of the linear progression of human civilization from primitive to advanced. The burden of proof lies heavily on those who challenge the established timeline of history, and for good reason. The archaeological and geological evidence required to prove the existence of an Ice Age civilization, or to definitively declare Yonaguni man-made, must be irrefutable. This demands finding artifacts, such as tools or inscriptions, that can be directly dated to the period in question, evidence that has so far remained elusive. Yet the existence of these sites themselves, these immense and complex anomalies, continues to exert a powerful pull on our imagination, demanding a better explanation than simple coincidence or misidentification. Our inquiry will now proceed by examining each of these three pillars in meticulous detail. We will first venture deep into the earth to map the chambers and decipher the purpose of Derinkuyu, the ultimate underground refuge. Then, we will dive into the clear, cold waters around Yonaguni to scrutinize the evidence and hear from both sides of its fierce scientific debate. Finally, we will connect the global clues, searching for the submerged truth that may finally unite these mysteries into a coherent, astonishing new chapter of the human story. Our inquiry now descends into the Anatolian heart of modern-day Turkey, to the Cappadocia region, a landscape famous for its fairy chimneys and surreal, otherworldly topography. Here, concealed beneath the volcanic tuff, lies Derinkuyu, the deepest and most expansive underground city ever discovered. Its sheer scale is staggering, plunging an estimated 85 meters into the earth and encompassing at least 8 accessible levels, with evidence suggesting up to 18 may exist in total. This was not a simple cave system, but a meticulously planned and engineered metropolis, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. What kind of society possessed the vision and the skill to carve such a world from solid rock? The rediscovery of Derinkuyu in 1963 was as mundane as it was momentous, beginning when a local man knocked down a wall in his basement while renovating his home. Behind the wall, he did not find another room, but a dark, mysterious passage leading into the depths, a tunnel that had been sealed for centuries. This accidental breakthrough unveiled a labyrinthine network of chambers, corridors, and shafts that had been lost to history. The initial surprise soon gave way to the profound realization that this was merely the tip of a colossal, hidden iceberg. As archaeologists began to explore, they mapped out a city designed for long-term survival, a subterranean marvel of ancient engineering. Mapping Derinkuyu reveals a vertical society, with each level serving a distinct and vital function for the community hidden within. The uppermost levels, closest to the surface, housed the stables, which could accommodate several thousand animals. Placing the livestock here was a strategic decision, allowing the fumes and waste to ventilate more easily and preventing them from contaminating the living areas below. Today, visitors can still see the stone troughs and mangers carved directly into the rock, a testament to the city's capacity for sustaining life. Moving deeper, one finds the domestic quarters, including living spaces, kitchens, and communal dining halls, all arranged with remarkable efficiency. Ventilation is the silent hero of Derinkuyu's design, a system so sophisticated that it continues to awe modern engineers. Over 50 vertical ventilation shafts, some as deep as the city itself, were meticulously bored through the rock, ensuring a constant supply of fresh air to every level. These shafts not only provided breathable air, but also helped regulate the temperature, keeping the city at a relatively stable and comfortable level year-round. Without this masterful airflow system, the city would have been an unlivable tomb of stale air and carbon dioxide. The precision required to align and construct these shafts without modern tools is a subject of intense scholarly admiration and debate. Equally critical to its function as a long-term refuge was Derinkuyu's self-contained water supply, which was ingeniously protected against sabotage by attackers. Deep wells were carved within the city's lower levels, providing access to a steady source of groundwater. Crucially, these wells were not connected to the surface, preventing an invading force from poisoning the water supply from above. Some tunnels leading to the wells were deliberately hidden and could be isolated, ensuring that even if part of the city was breached, the inhabitants would not die of thirst. This foresight demonstrates a deep understanding of siegecraft and the psychological warfare inherent in a prolonged attack. The city's primary defense, however, lay in its architecture of exclusion, most notably in the enormous, circular stone doors that secured critical passageways. These massive discs, carved from the same volcanic rock and measuring between 1 to 1.5 meters in diameter, could be rolled into place to block tunnels with incredible force. Weighing several hundred kilograms, these doors could only be opened from the inside, featuring a small hole that served as a peephole and a slot for a spear. Each level could be independently sealed, creating a series of defensive fallback positions and transforming the city into a multi-layered fortress, a deadly trap for any invaders who managed to penetrate its outer defenses. Beyond its defensive capabilities, mapping Derinkuyu reveals a complex and thriving community, complete with all the amenities of a city above ground. Archaeologists have identified large communal rooms that likely served as schools, meeting halls, and markets. There are also several chapels, identifiable by their distinct cross-shaped layout and the remnants of faded Byzantine-era frescoes depicting religious scenes. One particularly large hall on the third floor, featuring a barrel-vaulted ceiling, is believed to have been a religious school or a significant communal space. The presence of these sacred areas indicates that this was not merely a bunker, but a place where culture, faith, and education were preserved. Economic life also continued in the depths, with dedicated spaces for wine and oil production. Large vats for crushing grapes and presses for extracting olive oil were carved directly from the Cappadocian stone, showcasing the inhabitants' self-sufficiency. Storage rooms, numbering in the thousands, were designed to hold vast quantities of grain, wine, and other foodstuffs. These provisions were essential for enduring lengthy sieges, with estimates suggesting the city could sustain its population for several months without any contact with the outside world. This logistical planning implies a highly organized society with clear leadership and an efficient system for resource management. Perhaps most astonishing is the fact that Derinkuyu was not an isolated project, but part of a vast, interconnected underground network across Cappadocia. Miles of tunnels link Derinkuyu to at least 200 other underground settlements, the most notable of which is Kaymakla, another massive subterranean city just 9 kilometers away. This network suggests a regional defense strategy where entire communities could disappear underground in times of danger, moving between cities through hidden subterranean arteries. The sheer scale of this interconnected underworld forces a re-evaluation of the population and political organization of ancient Cappadocia, hinting at a civilization far more advanced and collaborative than previously imagined. The sheer scale of this interconnected underworld forces a re-evaluation of the population and political organization of ancient Cappadocia, hinting at a civilization far more advanced and collaborative than previously imagined. This level of sophistication is nowhere more apparent than in the triad of engineering challenges that had to be solved: ventilation, security, and logistics. The builders of Derinkuyu were not simply diggers, they were master engineers who confronted the fundamental problems of underground living with elegant and enduring solutions. Each system was designed with redundancy and foresight, ensuring the city could function as a self-sufficient ecosystem for months on end. To truly appreciate Derinkuyu, one must move beyond its scale and delve into the genius of its construction. The ventilation system of Derinkuyu is perhaps its most remarkable feat, a complex respiratory network that gave life to the subterranean city. At least 50 strategically placed shafts, some with diameters of over 1.5 meters, bored downwards from the surface to the lowest levels. These shafts functioned on a principle of natural physics known as the stack effect, where the difference in temperature between the cool depths and the warmer surface created a constant, gentle airflow. This natural convection ensured that fresh air was continuously drawn down, while stale air, carbon dioxide, and smoke were vented upwards. The precision required to align and carve these shafts through 85 meters of solid rock without any modern surveying equipment is a source of profound scientific wonder. Managing air quality went beyond simply providing oxygen. It involved controlling the byproducts of a hidden community. Thousands of inhabitants would have required light from oil lamps and heat from fires for cooking and warmth, both of which produce copious amounts of smoke and soot. The ventilation shafts were therefore not just simple holes, but likely part of a more complex system of air channels, designed to draw fumes away from living quarters and communal areas. Evidence suggests that kitchens and workshops with specific ventilation needs were placed closer to shafts or in dedicated chambers to minimize pollution. This demonstrates an intricate understanding of aerodynamics and environmental engineering that seems out of place for its traditionally accepted timeline. Such a system turns the entire rock formation into a living, breathing organism. Security was the paramount concern that shaped the very layout and anatomy of Derinkuyu, transforming it from a simple shelter into an impenetrable fortress. The city's primary defensive mechanism was the iconic 1.5-ton circular stone door, a masterclass in simple, effective engineering. Carved from the same volcanic tuff as the surrounding tunnels, these massive discs were set into a recessed groove in the floor, allowing them to be rolled into place with surprising ease by the defenders inside. From the outside, an invader would find a smooth, seamless stone wall with no visible handholds or hinges to exploit. Once closed, these doors could only be opened from within, featuring a small central hole that served as a peephole for observation and a slot for spears, turning every entrance into a deadly bottleneck. Beyond these formidable barriers, the city's very design was a weapon, intended to confuse, disorient, and trap any enemy foolish enough to enter. The corridors were intentionally narrow and winding, forcing intruders to proceed in single file, making them vulnerable to ambush from side passages or hidden crevices. Many passages are dead ends or lead to steep drops, acting as natural traps for those unfamiliar with the layout. The verticality of the city, with its levels connected by steep tunnels and ladders, could be easily controlled by defenders, who could sever access between floors. This labyrinthine architecture meant that even if an outer level was breached, the invaders would be lost in the disorienting maze, far from the city's vital core. The logistical planning required to sustain a population of up to 20,000 people underground is almost as impressive as the construction itself. The most critical resource, water, was secured through hidden wells that tapped into deep groundwater sources, completely disconnected from the surface to prevent poisoning by besiegers. These wells were dispersed throughout the city's levels, ensuring no single point of failure existed in the water supply. Furthermore, the city contained thousands of carved-out storerooms designed to hold immense quantities of dried food, wine, and oil. Archaeologists estimate these provisions could have supported the entire population for a period of 3 to 6 months, a duration that would cause most invading armies to abandon their siege. Food production and preparation were also integrated into the city's fabric, revealing a commitment to long-term habitation. Large communal kitchens featured stone basins for grinding grain and vats for pressing grapes and olives, ensuring a steady supply of bread and oil. The presence of winemaking facilities is particularly telling, suggesting that the inhabitants sought to maintain some semblance of normalcy and culture even in their subterranean refuge. The storage of food was also a science, with the cool, dry, and stable conditions of the deep earth acting as a natural refrigerator. This meticulous planning for sustenance transforms Derinkuyu from a temporary bolt hole into a permanent, self-reliant underground settlement. However, sustaining life also required managing waste, a problem solved with ingenious and practical plumbing. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of a sophisticated drainage system, with channels carved into the floor of many passages to carry away wastewater and refuse. These channels likely converged into larger cesspits located on the lowest levels, far from the main living and food storage areas. This separation of clean and dirty functions was critical for preventing the spread of disease in such a densely populated environment. The existence of such a system underlines the builders' comprehensive understanding of public health and hygiene. This was a city designed not just to survive, but to thrive in a state of siege. The tools used to create this subterranean marvel were, by all accounts, astonishingly simple, which amplifies the mystery of its construction. Builders likely employed iron or bronze pickaxes, chisels, and levers to excavate the relatively soft volcanic tuff. This rock, known as tuff, has a unique property. It is soft and easy to carve when first exposed to air, but hardens significantly over time. The builders exploited this characteristic perfectly, allowing them to hollow out vast spaces with basic tools, which then became incredibly durable and stable. The sheer volume of rock removed, estimated to be over 100,000 cubic meters, was likely carried out in wicker baskets. This implies a vast, organized labor force working in coordinated shifts for generations. The labor required to build and maintain Derinkuyu speaks to a highly structured and hierarchical society. Such a monumental project could not have been the work of a small, isolated group, but demanded the resources and manpower of a large, settled population. It required architects to design the layout, engineers to oversee ventilation and water systems, and a massive workforce to perform the physically demanding excavation. The organization of this workforce, the provision of their food and tools, and the management of the construction timeline all point to a sophisticated central authority. This challenges the traditional view of the region as a loose collection of small villages and suggests a powerful, unseen kingdom capable of mobilizing its people on an unprecedented scale. Ultimately, the engineering of Derinkuyu presents a paradox, a structure built with primitive tools that exhibits a level of sophistication that rivals modern urban planning. Every element, from the airflow in the deepest chambers to the placement of a stone door, was meticulously calculated for survival. It is a holistic system where security, logistics, and living conditions are not separate features, but are deeply integrated into a single, cohesive design. The builders possessed an intimate knowledge of geology, physics, and human psychology. They did not just dig a hole, they engineered an entire world beneath the feet of their enemies, a silent testament to human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming danger. The question then shifts from how they built it to why such a monumental effort was deemed necessary in the first place. The question of why such a monumental effort was deemed necessary plunges us directly into the heart of Derinkuyi's enduring mystery, forcing us to consider its primary function. Was it conceived primarily as a military fortress, a final refuge for times of crisis, or something more permanent, a fully functioning city turned inside out? The truth, according to many researchers, is likely a complex and evolving combination of all three, with its purpose shifting over the centuries. Each theory is supported by compelling evidence found within the labyrinthine tunnels, yet none can singularly explain every feature of this astonishing place. To understand Derinkuyi, we must separate the layers of its history and examine the clues left by its ancient builders. The most widely accepted theory posits Derinkuyi as a massive, multi-level refugee shelter, a subterranean haven for the entire population of the surrounding region. This interpretation aligns perfectly with the historical context of Cappadocia, a region that sat at the crossroads of empires and was frequently subjected to raids and invasions. From the Arab incursions of the 7th and 8th centuries to earlier threats from Persians and various marauding tribes, the need for a secure hiding place would have been paramount. The city's capacity to sustain up to 20,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies, for several months, strongly suggests it was designed for long-term survival during a siege. It was, in essence, a collective panic room on an unimaginable scale. Evidence supporting the quote 8 theory is abundant and practical, found in the very fabric of the city's design. The presence of extensive stables on the upper levels indicates that people brought their most valuable assets, horses, donkeys, and cattle, down with them, a clear sign of a temporary retreat, not a permanent agricultural society. Furthermore, the vast number of storerooms, far exceeding what would be needed for a resident population, points to a function of stockpiling resources in anticipation of hardship. The layout itself, with its focus on defense, bottlenecks, and secrecy, is optimized for keeping threats out, not for facilitating the daily flow of commerce and community life one would expect in a city. Every detail seems to scream, quote, 9 in the face of external danger. However, the theory of Derinkuyi as merely a temporary bolt hole struggles to account for other, more complex features that suggest a permanent or long-term presence. Deep within the complex, archaeologists have identified a religious school, a large chapel with a baptismal font, and what is believed to be a confessional room. These are not the makeshift prayer spaces of a terrified populace, but the established institutions of a settled, organized community with deeply rooted spiritual and educational traditions. A temporary refuge prioritizes survival above all else. But the inclusion of a formal school implies a concern for the continuation of knowledge and culture across generations. This challenges the notion that people simply hid here until the danger passed. The presence of a Byzantine-style church, located on the lowest level, serves as a powerful argument for a permanent settlement. Carved with care and featuring a cruciform layout and a central apse, this church was a place of regular worship, not just a last-ditch sanctuary. Historical records indicate that early Christians, fleeing persecution from Roman authorities, often established hidden communities in the remote regions of Cappadocia. It is plausible that Derinkuyi began as such a secret permanent settlement, a city where an entire religious community could live and worship in safety, unseen by the world above. Over time, this permanent core could have been expanded to accommodate surrounding villagers during periods of conflict, evolving into the massive refuge we see today. Further clues lie in the evidence of sustained economic activity, which points beyond simple stockpiling towards continuous production. Large communal kitchens with stone basins for grinding grain and vats for pressing wine and olives suggest food processing was an ongoing activity. While one could press grapes brought from the surface, the sheer scale of these facilities implies a more constant operation, perhaps using grapes from vineyards that may have even existed in protected valleys nearby. The presence of winemaking and oil production infrastructure indicates an attempt to maintain a normal, functioning economy, a hallmark of a permanent settlement rather than a temporary camp. Life, it seems, was not just about surviving, but also about living with a degree of cultural and economic normalcy. This debate forces us to reconsider the timeline of Derinkuyi's construction, which was not a single event, but a process that likely unfolded over many centuries, if not millennia. The original builders may have had one purpose in mind, but subsequent generations, facing different threats and possessing different needs, would have expanded and adapted the city. The earliest phases are often attributed to the Phrygians, a sophisticated Anatolian civilization known for their engineering skills, as far back as the 8th century BCE. If they were the original builder, the initial purpose may have been far removed from the defense against Arab raids that defined its later use. Pushing the timeline even further back, some daring theorists propose an origin with the Hittites, who ruled the region from the 17th to the 12th century BCE. The Hittites were known to build underground structures, and the sheer organizational power required to initiate a project of this magnitude points to a powerful, centralized Bronze Age kingdom. While direct evidence for a Hittite connection is currently lacking, the theory cannot be entirely dismissed. It opens up the tantalizing possibility that Derinkuyu is far older than conventionally believed, a relic of a lost chapter of human history. This would fundamentally alter our understanding of the technological capabilities of ancient Anatolian civilizations. Ultimately, the problem in definitively answering the question of purpose lies in the paucity of direct archaeological evidence. The soft, tough stone, while easy to carve, does not preserve inscriptions, organic materials, or small artifacts well. Much of the dating is based on architectural style and the analysis of materials found in the fill dirt, which can only provide a terminus antiquem, a date before which the city was already in use. Without a dedicatory inscription or a cache of datable artifacts found in a primary context, archaeologists are left to interpret the architecture itself. This structural evidence is compelling but also ambiguous, lending itself to multiple valid interpretations. The most plausible conclusion is a hybrid one, where Derinkuyu's purpose was fluid, adapting to the needs of its inhabitants across vast stretches of time. It may have begun as a small, permanent underground settlement for a community seeking security or privacy. As regional conflicts intensified, this core would have been massively expanded, first into a large-scale refuge for the surrounding populace, and then into a near-impenetrable fortress. During centuries of relative peace, parts of it might have been used for storage or even as unique dwellings, while during times of war, it would spring to life as a full-scale city. It was a tool, a chameleon, designed to be whatever was required. Beyond the practical functions of a fortress or refuge, we must also consider the psychological dimension of living underground in such a vast community. The deliberate inclusion of large communal halls, religious spaces, and a school speaks to an understanding that morale is as critical as food and water for long-term survival. In the dark, enclosed environment, the threat of despair and social breakdown would have been as great as any invading army. These shared spaces were essential for maintaining social cohesion, cultural identity, and a sense of normalcy. They were a testament to the builders' profound understanding of not just engineering, but of the human spirit itself. In the final analysis, to ask whether Derinkuyu was a fortress, a refuge, or a settlement is to ask a question that is too simple for such a complex creation. It was all of these things, and likely more, its purpose shifting like the sand dunes of the surface world it was built to escape. It is the ultimate expression of human adaptability, a city that could shrink or expand, hide or defend, depending on the whims of history. The true genius of Derinkuyu was not in its stone doors or its ventilation shafts, but in its profound and enduring flexibility. This deep and enigmatic purpose, carved into the living rock, now gives way to another mystery, one not buried beneath the earth, but drowned beneath the sea. This deep and enigmatic purpose, carved into the living rock, now gives way to another mystery, one not buried beneath the earth, but drowned beneath the sea. While Derinkuyu hides its secrets in the arid plains of Turkey, another perplexing structure lies submerged off the coast of a remote Japanese island, challenging our understanding of the past with its colossal and enigmatic form. The ocean, covering more than 70% of our planet, remains the last great unexplored frontier on Earth, a vast repository of history where clues to lost epochs may lie patiently waiting. It is a world of immense pressure and perpetual darkness, where the preservation of ruins can be both exquisite and bafflingly complete. Here, in the depths, the line between the work of nature and the hand of man becomes remarkably blurred, giving rise to discoveries that defy easy explanation. The story of this next enigma begins not with ancient texts or archaeological surveys, but with a single diver's quest for sharks in the spring of 1987. Kihachiro Aratake, a local dive shop owner and director of the Yonaguni-cho Tourism Association, was exploring the southern coast of Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost inhabited island. He was searching for the perfect spot to observe hammerhead sharks that congregated in the area's powerful currents, a popular attraction for his diving clients. As he navigated the underwater landscape about 100 feet from the shore, a colossal dark shape loomed into view, something that did not fit the irregular natural rock formations he knew so well. It was a massive angular structure rising from the seabed like a submerged, step-sided pyramid, its precision and scale immediately striking him as profoundly unnatural. Aratake surfaced, his mind reeling from what he had witnessed, convinced he had stumbled upon something of immense historical significance. What he had found was not a coral reef or a volcanic outcrop, but a sprawling megalithic complex covering an area the size of a football field. He returned to the site repeatedly, documenting his find and beginning to raise alarm within the local and national scientific communities. The initial response was a mixture of curiosity and deep skepticism. The idea of a human-made structure of such scale predating known Japanese civilization was almost heretical. Yet the sheer geometric regularity of the formation was difficult to dismiss outright, and soon it attracted the attention of marine geologists and archaeologists, most notably Professor Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus. The location of the discovery, Yonaguni Island, adds another layer of isolation and mystery to the tale. Situated at the very end of the Ryukyu archipelago, the island is closer to Taiwan than to mainland Japan, lying deep within the treacherous waters where the East China Sea meets the Pacific Ocean. This region is scoured by the powerful Kuroshio Current, one of the strongest ocean currents in the world, a force of nature that has shaped the coastline and marine life for millennia. It is a place steeped in folklore, with legends of a lost continent called Mu, said to have sunk beneath the waves in a cataclysmic event. In this remote and myth-laden corner of the world, the discovery of what looked like an ancient stone temple seemed almost fated. The main structure, which Aratake dubbed the Monument, is an astonishing 524 feet long, 138 feet wide, and 90 feet tall, rising from a depth of 80 feet to within 15 feet of the surface. Its most prominent feature is a series of enormous terraces that step up in a uniform fashion, reminiscent of the stepped pyramids of ancient Mesoamerica. These terraces are punctuated by sharp, right-angled corners and flat, horizontal surfaces that cover thousands of square feet, a level of precision that seems improbable for a natural formation. The entire edifice is oriented in a specific cardinal direction, with its main faces aligned to the cardinal points, a common feature in ceremonial architecture across the ancient world. Beyond the main monument, the site is a sprawling complex of formations that further fuel the debate over its origin. Adjacent to the primary structure, divers have identified what appears to be a wide road or avenue, paved with flat stones and flanked by smaller megaliths. There are two towering stone monoliths standing side by side like ancient guardians, each weighing several hundred tons. Further afield, other features have been documented, including a smaller stone circle resembling a rudimentary observatory and a large rock formation that vaguely resembles a turtle, an animal with significant mythological weight in many Asian cultures. These elements, when viewed together, create the impression of a planned and coherent city layout, not a random scattering of rocks. The most compelling evidence cited by proponents of the artificiality theory lies in the finer details of the stonework. Close-up photography and video have revealed what appear to be tool marks, small drill holes, and finely carved symbols etched into the rock faces. Some of the steps have unusual notches and channels cut into them, whose purpose is unknown, but which seem to serve a functional rather than a geological purpose. A set of what looks like carved post holes, arranged in a specific pattern, has been identified, suggesting the former presence of wooden structures or supports. These seemingly man-made details are the smoking gun for advocates who argue that no known natural process could account for such specific and intricate modifications. Professor Masaki Kimura, who has studied the site for over a decade, became its most ardent and scholarly champion. A marine geologist, he was initially skeptical, but became convinced after more than 100 dives that the structure was unequivocally man-made. Kimura theorized that Yonaguni was a ceremonial complex, perhaps a temple, built by an ancient civilization that thrived in the region during the last ice age. His most startling claim was that the monument was at least 10,000 years old, constructed when sea levels were significantly lower, and Yonaguni was part of a land bridge connecting Japan to the Asian continent. This timeline pushes back the known history of sophisticated stonework in Japan by thousands of years, predating even the earliest known pottery from the Jomon period. This radical hypothesis immediately faced a formidable counterargument from mainstream geologists and archaeologists. They pointed out that the rock of the region is primarily sandstone, a sedimentary rock known for its tendency to fracture along clean, straight lines. The natural process of jointing, where tectonic stresses cause rock to split along predictable planes, can easily create the appearance of right angles and flat surfaces. Furthermore, the proponents of the natural formation theory highlight the immense power of the Kuroshio current. Over thousands of years, this relentless flow of water could have preferentially eroded the softer layers of sandstone, leaving behind the harder layers in a pattern that resembles terraces and steps. Geologists argue that features like the road are simply natural channels or trenches carved by water movement, and the twin monoliths are isolated remnants of a larger rock strata that have simply resisted erosion. They contend that what some interpret as tool marks are nothing more than the natural scars of a dynamic marine environment, created by abrasion from sand and rocks carried by the currents. The perfectly right-angled corners, they suggest, are an illusion of perspective, created where two natural jointing planes intersect at a near 90-degree angle. From this viewpoint, the Yonaguni Monument is an extraordinary and rare example of a geological phenomenon, a natural masterpiece of erosion rather than a testament to a lost civilization. The debate is not merely academic. It strikes at the very heart of how we evaluate evidence and construct our historical narratives. If Yonaguni is natural, it is a stunning reminder of nature's capacity to create forms that mimic human design, a geological wonder that challenges our perception. However, if it is man-made, the implications are staggering, forcing a complete rewrite of not just Japanese history, but of global human history. It would suggest that a technologically advanced seafaring people existed during the Paleolithic era, a time when humans were thought to be simple hunter-gatherers. This possibility is why the scientific community remains so cautious, demanding an extraordinary level of proof for such an extraordinary claim. Ultimately, the discovery of Yonaguni by Kihachiro Aratake opened a Pandora's box of questions that continue to polarize experts. The formation sits in a gray area, a liminal space between geology and archaeology, where evidence can be interpreted in two completely opposite ways with equal conviction. The site is protected by its remote location and the powerful currents that make extensive study difficult and dangerous, meaning that much of the evidence remains buried and unexamined. As the research continues, the world watches and waits, caught between the image of a natural miracle and the ghost of a lost city. Was it carved by human hands, or crafted by the patient, relentless hand of the ocean itself? This fundamental question lies at the heart of one of the most compelling and polarizing debates in modern archaeology and geology. On one side stand the geological purists, who see in the formations of Yonaguni an extraordinary yet entirely natural masterpiece of erosion and tectonic forces. On the other side are the proponents of an artificial origin, who believe they are staring at the remnants of a lost, technologically advanced civilization from the dim mists of prehistory. The dispute is not simply about identifying a rock formation. It is a battleground for the very methodology of science, a clash between established paradigms and the allure of a world-changing discovery. Every feature of the monument, from its massive terraces to its smallest markings, becomes a piece of evidence interpreted through these two opposing worldviews. The outcome of this debate could either reaffirm our understanding of the past or shatter it completely. Mainstream geologists present a powerful case rooted in the well-understood principles of sedimentology and erosion. The bedrock of Yonaguni Island is composed of sandstone from the Yaeyama group, a geological formation known for its distinct horizontal layers, or strata, of varying hardness. This natural layering is the key to the geological explanation, as the powerful Kuroshio current acts like a relentless liquid sandpaper, preferentially wearing away the softer, less compacted layers of sandstone. Over millennia, this differential erosion would naturally sculpt the rock into a series of steps and terraces, leaving behind the harder, more resistant strata as flat, horizontal surfaces. What appears to be meticulous engineering could, in this view, simply be the elegant and predictable outcome of natural processes acting upon a heterogeneous material. Further supporting the natural formation theory is the well-documented geological phenomenon of jointing, where immense tectonic pressures cause rock to fracture along clean, straight planes. These joints can run vertically and horizontally, intersecting to create what appear to be perfect right angles and rectangular blocks. Geologists point out that sandstone is particularly susceptible to this kind of fracturing, meaning the sharp corners and sheer walls of the Yonaguni monument are not necessarily indicative of a chisel or saw. They argue that the ocean simply exploited these pre-existing lines of weakness, carving out the formation along the natural fault lines in the rock. From this perspective, the monument is a textbook example of structural geology, albeit on a grand and visually spectacular scale. Proponents of the man-made hypothesis, however, dismiss these geological explanations as insufficient to account for the site's most compelling details. They argue that while natural processes can create straight lines and flat surfaces, the sheer regularity, symmetry, and scale of the Yonaguni structures defy a random origin. Professor Kimura and his team have identified what they believe are unequivocal signs of human intervention, including a series of perfectly formed steps, a triangular pool with a drain channel, and what looks like a carved turtle figure. These features, they contend, are too specific and functionally designed to be the products of erosion. The sheer scale of the monument, covering an area larger than a football field, also suggests a monumental undertaking of quarrying and construction, not a chance geological formation. Perhaps the most contentious evidence cited by the artificiality camp are the numerous markings that appear to be tool marks and quarry scars. Close-up underwater photography has revealed small, consistent holes in the rock, which some researchers interpret as drill holes used for splitting the stone. There are also parallel grooves and notches on the surfaces that look remarkably like they were left by primitive saws or chisels. While geologists counter that marine organisms can bore such holes and that currents can carve grooves, the proponents maintain that the consistency and pattern of these marks suggest deliberate action. They ask what natural process could create such uniform, purposeful-looking indentations across a vast and complex structure. The context of the last ice age provides another powerful, though highly debated, piece of the puzzle for the man-made theory. Approximately 20,000 years ago, during the peak of the last glaciation, global sea levels were estimated to be over 120 meters lower than they are today. This would have exposed the continental shelf around Japan, connecting the main islands to the Asian mainland and placing Yonaguni on a coastline rather than submerged in the deep sea. In this paleo-environmental scenario, a civilization could have easily built a structure on the land, only for it to be swallowed by the rising seas as the ice caps melted between 12 and 8,000 years ago. This timeline conveniently places the monument's construction in a pre-agricultural, pre-pottery era, making the theory both revolutionary and profoundly difficult to prove. The debate also extends to the secondary formations surrounding the main monument, such as the wide, flat road that divers have identified. Geologists suggest this is merely a natural channel or a gap between two rock formations, scoured flat by water and sediment over thousands of years. They argue that nature is perfectly capable of creating straight, flat-bottom channels, especially in a region with strong currents and well-defined jointing. However, those who see a human hand at work point to the road's uniform width and its apparent connection to other features within the complex. To them, it is not a random channel, but a planned thoroughfare, an integral part of a larger, coherent architectural design. Another intriguing line of argument for the man-made camp involves the potential astronomical alignments of the structure. Some researchers have claimed that certain platforms and faces of the monument are oriented towards significant celestial events, such as the rising sun on the summer solstice. This type of alignment is a hallmark of ancient ceremonial and religious sites across the globe, from Stonehenge in England to the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and its relationship to the seasons. If the Yonaguni monument possesses such alignments, it would be powerful evidence of intentional design and ritualistic purpose. Skeptics, however, caution that with a large enough rock formation, one can almost always find features that align with the sun, moon, or stars, making such correlations potentially coincidental. Ultimately, the stalemate persists due to a frustrating lack of definitive, unambiguous proof that would satisfy the stringent requirements of the scientific method. For a site to be conclusively identified as man-made, archaeologists typically look for artifacts like tools, pottery, hearths, or inscriptions, tangible evidence of human activity. To date, extensive dives at Yonaguni have yielded no such cultural artifacts. Everything found is stone. Proponents argue that any such items would have been washed away by the currents or are buried deep under layers of sediment, impossible to reach without a massive and costly excavation. This absence of evidence is used by both sides to support their claims, with one side seeing it as expected for a 10,000-year-old site, and the other seeing it as the final nail in the coffin of the artificiality theory. The heart of the scientific hesitation lies in the immense burden of proof required for a discovery of this magnitude. To claim that Yonaguni is natural requires no revision of history. It simply adds a fascinating new wonder to the geological catalog. To claim it is man-made, however, is to propose the existence of an unknown, sophisticated, maritime civilization during the Paleolithic era, a time when humanity was believed to be living in simple hunter-gatherer societies. Such a claim would necessitate a complete rewriting of human history, a fundamental shift in our understanding of our own origins. Therefore, the default position of mainstream science must be one of extreme skepticism, demanding overwhelming and irrefutable evidence before accepting a conclusion so extraordinary. And so, the Yonaguni monument remains suspended in a state of profound uncertainty, a scientific enigma of the highest order. It is a place where geology and archaeology collide, where every fact is contested and every interpretation is subjective. Both sides of the debate can marshal compelling arguments to support their views, yet neither can deliver the knockout blow that would end the controversy once and for all. The formation continues to guard its secrets deep beneath the waves of the East China Sea, a silent testament to either nature's artistry or humanity's forgotten grandeur. The search for answers at Yonaguni forces us to question not just what we know about the past, but how we come to know it, and what mysteries may still lie hidden in the most unexpected corners of our world. This debate, however, is not confined to a single island in Japan. Similar underwater anomalies have been reported across the globe, each adding another piece to the puzzle of a potential forgotten chapter in human history. The most compelling evidence cited by proponents of the man-made hypothesis at Yonaguni revolves around its undeniable geometric precision, features which they argue are far too regular to be products of random natural forces. Chief among these are the numerous right angles and perfectly straight edges that define the monument's massive structures. Unlike the chaotic and irregular shapes typically carved by wind and water, these formations exhibit a level of angular perfection that is characteristic of architectural design rather than geological erosion. The sheer scale of these geometric features is what truly astounds, with flat faces stretching for meters and corners intersecting at exact 90-degree angles. This pervasive geometric consistency across the entire site forms the bedrock of the argument that an intelligent and highly skilled hand was responsible for its creation. To accept these features as purely natural, one must accept an extraordinary series of geological coincidences occurring on a monumental scale. The most frequently cited example is the immense formation known as the stage or the terrace, a vast L-shaped platform with a perfectly flat top and two sheer vertical faces that meet at an exact right angle. Measuring approximately 250 meters from end to end, this platform is too large to be a single block and appears to be a series of stepped levels built with incredible precision. Its surface is remarkably level, defying the natural undulations one would expect in a rock formation, and its edges are unnaturally straight, as if cut by a giant saw. Surrounding this main platform are numerous other features that echo this geometric language, including raised pillars, stone corridors, and what appear to be pathways with uniform widths and depths. Each of these elements, viewed in isolation, might be dismissed as a geological anomaly, but their collective presence and apparent interconnection suggest a unified, coherent design. This orchestration of multiple geometric forms points towards a preconceived plan, a blueprint executed with remarkable skill over a vast area, a concept fundamentally alien to the random processes of nature. Beyond the large-scale architecture, a closer examination of the rock surfaces reveals what many researchers interpret as definitive evidence of quarrying and toolwork. Across the monument, particularly on the vertical faces and within the so-called trenches, are small symmetrical holes that appear to be drill marks. These are not random pockmarks, but are often found in neat, parallel rows, consistent with techniques used by ancient stonemasons to split large blocks of rock by inserting wooden or metal wedges. Professor Masaki Kimura's team has meticulously documented these holes, noting their consistent diameter and depth, which they argue is impossible for natural erosion or marine life to produce with such regularity. While geologists point out that certain marine bivalves can bore into rock, proponents counter that the specific patterns and locations of these holes, often along straight lines where a quarryman would logically want to split a block, point decisively towards an artificial origin. The argument extends to the numerous parallel grooves and notches found on the surfaces, which look remarkably like the marks left by saws or chisels, suggesting a systematic process of cutting and dressing the stone. Further bolstering the case for artificiality are the distinct shapes and symmetrical forms that seem to serve no clear natural purpose. Divers and researchers have identified formations that resemble large, carved steps, some of which are over 2 meters high, leading up to the main platforms in a way that suggests a ceremonial or functional pathway. There is also a prominent triangular-shaped pool carved into one of the upper levels, complete with what appears to be a small channel or drain at its base, a feature with no obvious natural explanation. Perhaps most intriguing is a large stone formation that bears a striking resemblance to a turtle, with a head, shell, and flippers clearly discernible. While the human brain is predisposed to finding patterns in randomness, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, the specificity and three-dimensionality of these forms at Yonaguni lead many to believe they are not tricks of the eye, but deliberately sculpted motifs, holding cultural or religious significance for their creators. The problem of scale and coherence is perhaps the most difficult aspect for the natural formation theory to overcome when considering these detailed features. It is one thing to suggest that a single straight line or a right-angled corner could be formed by a fortuitous alignment of rock joints. It is another thing entirely to propose that a complex, covering an area of several hundred square meters, incorporating platforms, pillars, steps, pools, and roads, all exhibiting consistent geometry and apparent tool marks, is the result of a series of coincidences. The various elements of the Yonaguni monument appear to work together as a single, integrated structure, with, quote, 17 connecting different, quote, 18 and terraces at varying elevations. This holistic design implies a level of planning, engineering, and project management that is a hallmark of a sophisticated civilization, not of blind geological forces. The logistical challenge of quarrying, shaping, and arranging such massive stones, whether above or below water, speaks to a capability that mainstream archaeology does not attribute to any known culture of that supposed era. To contextualize these claims, it is useful to compare the features at Yonaguni with those found at undisputed ancient quarries and construction sites around the world. The Aswan quarries in southern Egypt, for example, show clear evidence of how ancient Egyptians split massive granite obelisks using drill holes and wedges, techniques that left marks very similar to those seen at Yonaguni. The famous trilithon at Baalbek in Lebanon, with its 1,000-ton stone blocks, shows the same kind of precision cutting and angular construction that defies simple explanation. Proponents of the Yonaguni theory argue that the similarities are too strong to be coincidental, suggesting that whoever built the Japanese monument used the same or similar stoneworking techniques as other ancient master builders. This comparative approach frames the evidence not in a vacuum, but as part of a global pattern of sophisticated ancient engineering, lending a degree of plausibility to the otherwise extraordinary claims. The argument becomes one of recognizing a shared technological signature rather than an isolated anomaly. Geologists, however, remain steadfast in their counter-argument, which is rooted in a firm understanding of the region's geology and the powerful forces of marine erosion. The rock of the Yonaguni monument is a fine-grained sandstone known for its well-defined orthogonal joint sets, which are natural fractures that run in straight lines, often at perfect right angles to each other. These joints represent planes of weakness in the rock, and over millions of years, the relentless action of ocean currents and wave action preferentially erodes the rock along these planes. This process can easily account for the straight edges and right angles, as the softer rock between the joints is washed away, leaving behind the harder, more resistant core stones. The flat surfaces, they argue, are simply natural bedding planes that were originally laid down horizontally when the sediment was deposited, now exposed as the overlying layers have eroded. The steps and terraces can be explained by differential weathering, where harder layers of sandstone resist erosion, while the softer layers beneath them are more quickly removed. The phenomenon of differential weathering is central to the geological explanation for the monument's most complex features. Sandstone is not a uniform material, but is composed of alternating layers of varying hardness and composition, created by changing environmental conditions during its formation. When exposed to the abrasive forces of the sea, these layers erode at different rates, with the softer material being carved away more quickly, leaving behind the harder layers in relief. This process naturally creates a terraced or stepped appearance, mimicking the look of constructed levels. The triangular pool, geologists suggest, could be a naturally formed depression where a particularly soft pocket of rock was eroded away. Even the parallel grooves can be explained as striations left by rocks and sediment being dragged across the surface by strong currents, a process that can carve surprisingly straight lines over vast periods of time. In this view, the Yonaguni monument is not a structure that was built, but one that was revealed, sculpted into its present form by the patient and powerful hand of nature. Ultimately, the debate over the tool marks and right angles of Yonaguni boils down to a fundamental question of probability and interpretation. Both sides present logical and scientifically plausible explanations for the same evidence, leading to an intellectual stalemate. For geologists, the principle of uniformitarianism, that the present is the key to the past, dictates that we should seek known, observable natural processes to explain geological features, no matter how spectacular they may appear. For proponents of the artificiality theory, the sheer improbability of nature creating something so perfectly geometric, so consistent, and so apparently full of functional design on such a grand scale is reason enough to suspect human intervention. They argue that to dismiss all of the evidence as coincidence is to ignore the overwhelming pattern that stares back from the stone. Without the definitive quote 21, a single, unambiguous artifact like a tool, a piece of pottery, or an inscription, the site refuses to yield its ultimate secret, leaving it as one of the most provocative and divisive mysteries on our planet. While the debate over Yonaguni rages on, it serves as a powerful reminder that this single monument may not be an isolated anomaly. Our planet, covered overwhelmingly by water, guards its secrets in the deep, and other locations around the globe echo the same profound questions of artificiality versus natural formation. These submerged sites, found in diverse and distant corners of the world, hint at a possible pattern of forgotten history, a legacy lost to the rising tides of time. The challenge for science is to investigate these claims with rigor, separating genuine archaeological revelation from misinterpreted geology. Each new discovery forces us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that the story of human civilization is far older and more complex than we have dared to imagine. The search for answers, therefore, must extend far beyond the shores of Yonaguni, into the vast and mysterious archives of the ocean floor. One of the most famous and controversial of these alternative sites is the Bimini Road, located off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. First discovered in 1968 by a diver following an unusual sonar reading, the formation consists of a half-mile-long northeast-southwest linear arrangement of massive rectangular limestone blocks. These stones, each measuring up to 15 feet in length, appear to be perfectly fitted and arranged in a pattern that strongly resembles a man-made road or pier. The sheer scale and regularity of the structure immediately sparked intense interest and speculation. Proponents of the theory that it is artificial quickly dubbed it the Bimini Road, and it has since become a cornerstone of evidence for those who believe in lost civilizations like Atlantis. The argument for the Bimini Road being a ruin of an ancient culture is compelling for many, particularly due to its geometric precision and the context of its discovery. The stones are composed of beach rock, which can form naturally, but critics argue that natural processes rarely create such uniform, right-angled blocks over such a vast area. Furthermore, the discovery seemed to fulfill a specific prophecy made by the famous American psychic Edgar Cayce, who stated in the 1930s that evidence of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in 1968. This prophetic connection added a layer of mystique and popular appeal to the site, leading many to search for further proof of a once great civilization. Researchers have pointed to what they claim are tool marks, stone anchors, and even a second parallel formation, suggesting a more complex infrastructure than a simple geological anomaly. Mainstream geologists and archaeologists, however, present a robust counter-argument rooted in well-understood coastal processes. They maintain that the Bimini Road is a classic example of natural beach rock formation, which occurs when carbonate sediments in the intertidal zone are cemented together by the precipitation of minerals from seawater. This naturally forms a hard, flat layer of rock, which, over time, can fracture along natural stress lines, creating rectangular blocks that look uncannily like paving stones. The forces of tidal action and storms would then be responsible for moving and arranging these fractured blocks into linear patterns along the shore. According to this theory, the perfect geometry is an illusion created by the mind's tendency to impose order on random natural patterns, a phenomenon not unlike the one observed at Yonaguni. Despite the strong geological explanation, the Bimini Road continues to be a subject of fierce debate and ongoing investigation. Some researchers have conducted core samples and analysis that they claim show evidence of blocks being placed on top of an older, different type of sediment, suggesting a deliberate construction. Others point to the presence of what appear to be megalithic circles and other formations in the vicinity, arguing that the road is part of a larger, now submerged complex. Yet without definitive, unambiguous proof, such as an unequivocal artifact or inscription found in situ within the structure, the site remains in a gray area. Like Yonaguni, the Bimini Road challenges our assumptions and forces a dialogue between established science and alternative theories, a dialogue that remains unresolved decades after its initial discovery. Moving from the warm waters of the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, we encounter another set of submerged ruins, but ones with a far greater degree of mainstream archaeological acceptance. Off the coast of Mahabalipuram, a historic port city in southeastern India, lie the remnants of ancient structures that were exposed by the devastating tsunami of 2004. For centuries, local legends had spoken of the 7 pagodas, magnificent temples that once graced the shoreline, with only one remaining visible on land today. The colossal waves of the tsunami, however, scoured the seabed, revealing what many believe to be the other 6, turning long-held myth into tangible reality. Divers from the Archaeological Survey of India immediately launched an expedition to explore the newly uncovered site. What they found was a complex of man-made structures spread over a large area, confirming the legends that had been passed down through generations. The expedition uncovered a series of granite walls, a platform with steps leading into the sea, and scattered stone blocks that were clearly dressed and shaped by human hands. Among the most significant finds was a complete temple structure, estimated to be about 40 by 25 meters, adorned with carvings of elaborately dressed animals, including lions, elephants, and mythical creatures. The presence of these carvings and the obvious construction techniques left little doubt in the minds of the investigating archaeologists that they were looking at the remains of a bustling port city that had been consumed by the sea. Carbon dating of some artifacts suggests the structures could be around 1,500 years old, dating them to the Pallava dynasty that ruled the region. The discovery at Mahabalipuram provides a fascinating counterpoint to the controversies of Yonaguni and Bimini, as it is a case where submerged structures are widely acknowledged to be man-made. Here, the connection to a known historical civilization, the Pallavas, provides a solid cultural and chronological framework. The ruins are not an anomaly, but an extension of the known architectural style of that period, matching the famous shore temple that still stands on the beach. This acceptance, however, does not eliminate the mystery. The primary questions shift from "is it artificial?" to "why did it sink?" and "what more is still buried?" The site confirms that coastal erosion and geological events can indeed swallow entire cities, lending credence to the possibility that other, older submerged sites could also be remnants of lost human settlements. Yet even at Mahabalipuram, the full story remains untold, and the ocean continues to hold its secrets close. While the exposed structures have been documented, the vast majority of the site remains buried under sand and silt, awaiting further exploration. The exact reasons for the submergence are still debated, with theories ranging from a sudden, catastrophic subsidence of the land to a more gradual rise in sea level over several centuries. The discovery powerfully validates the oral histories of the local people, demonstrating that myths and legends can sometimes preserve kernels of ancient truth. Mahabalipuram serves as a crucial piece of evidence, proving that our planet's oceans are indeed museums of human history, and that what lies beneath the waves can rewrite our understanding of the past. It stands as a confirmed example of the very type of discovery that proponents of Yonaguni and Bimini believe they have found. Perhaps the most enigmatic and technologically challenging of all these underwater claims lies deep beneath the waters of the Caribbean Sea, off the western coast of Cuba. In 2001, a Canadian-led research team using advanced side-scan sonar equipment detected a series of startlingly symmetrical structures at a depth of approximately 2,200 feet. The sonar images revealed a sprawling area covered with what appeared to be geometric formations, including stone structures that resembled pyramids, roads, and buildings arranged in organized patterns. The researchers, marine engineers Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinsweig, were stunned by what they saw, as the formations seemed to defy any known natural geological explanation. The Cuban site, sometimes referred to as, quote, 26, quote, presents a profound mystery that dwarfs the others due to its immense depth and the clarity of the sonar data. At more than 2,000 feet down, the site is far beyond the reach of conventional diving and requires the use of remotely operated vehicles for any direct observation. The sonar imagery shows smooth, white sand alongside large, megalithic stone blocks, some of which appear to be arranged in pyramid-like shapes with distinct linear features. The sheer scale of the potential complex is immense, covering an area of several square kilometers. The geological composition of the area is also unusual, as it is not known for the kind of natural formations that could be mistaken for structures, making the interpretation of the data even more perplexing for the team that discovered it. The implications of a man-made city at such a depth are staggering and challenge the foundations of mainstream archaeology and geology. To be at 2,200 feet below sea level, the land on which this potential city was built would have had to be above water at a time when sea levels were drastically lower. According to most geological models of sea level change since the last ice age, this area would not have been exposed for at least 50,000 years, a time long before any known advanced human civilization is believed to have existed. This fact forces a radical reconsideration of history. Either an unknown, highly sophisticated civilization existed in the Americas tens of thousands of years ago, capable of massive construction projects, or the sonar images are a misinterpretation of a purely natural phenomenon. As with the other sites, the Cuban discovery has been met with a mixture of excitement and profound skepticism from the scientific community. The primary challenge is the lack of direct evidence. Without being able to retrieve a single stone, take a core sample, or get clear underwater photographs, the interpretation remains based solely on sonar data, which can sometimes be misleading. Critics suggest that the quote 27 quote could be unusual volcanic pillow lava formations or other types of standardized, yet natural seabed geology. The prohibitive cost and technical difficulty of mounting a full-scale expedition to such a depth have left the investigation in a state of limbo. The Cuban site, therefore, remains the most tantalizing and inaccessible of these global mysteries, a potential game-changer for human history locked away in the abyssal dark. To move from saltwater to freshwater, we find another compelling example of a submerged archaeological wonder in the high-altitude waters of Lake Titicaca, straddling the border between Peru and Bolivia. At an altitude of over 12,500 feet, this deep sacred lake has long been central to the mythology of the Inca and their predecessors, the Tiwanaku people. In the year 2000, an international team of archaeologists discovered a sprawling temple complex, a terraced agricultural area, and a pre-Incan road beneath the lake's surface near the Island of the Sun. The discovery was made using a submarine and confirmed by divers who found a wall stretching for nearly 1,000 feet and a stone terrace measuring about 200 by 50 feet. Unlike the more controversial sites, the ruins in Lake Titicaca are conclusively man-made and are directly linked to the ancient Tiwanaku culture, which flourished in the region from around 500 BCE to 1000 CE. Carbon dating of organic material found on the site has yielded dates of approximately 1,000 to 1,500 years old, fitting snugly within the Tiwanaku timeline. The architectural style of the submerged structures, including the precision-cut stonework, is consistent with that found at the nearby Tiwanaku capital, a mere 15 kilometers away. This provides a clear and accepted cultural context, suggesting that the lake was home to a significant Tiwanaku settlement that was later submerged, a fact corroborated by local legends of a lost underwater city. Even with a known historical culture to attribute them to, The Titicaca ruins pose significant questions about the relationship between ancient humans and their environment. According to Inca mythology, Lake Titicaca was the site of creation, and the Island of the Sun was the birthplace of the sun god, Inti, and the first Inca, Manco Capac. The discovery of a major ceremonial center and settlement underwater gives a new dimension to these myths, suggesting they may be a folk memory of a real catastrophic event that saw the sacred city consumed by the lake. Geologists are divided on whether the submergence was caused by a massive earthquake, a volcanic eruption that dammed a river and raised the water level, or a period of climatic change that led to a gradual rise in the lake over centuries. The reason why such an important site was built in a location vulnerable to the lake's fluctuations remains a subject of intense study. From the geometric puzzle of Bimini to the confirmed ruins of Mahabalipuram, the deep-sea enigma near Cuba, and the high-altitude mysteries of Lake Titicaca, a global pattern emerges. These sites, separated by vast oceans and disparate cultures, all share a common theme: the testament of human endeavor now lying silent beneath the waves. Some challenge the very timeline of our technological advancement, while others simply fill in gaps in the history of known civilizations. They demonstrate that the coastlines of the ancient world were not static, and that the rise of the seas after the last ice age, along with other geological events, has erased a significant portion of the human story from the terrestrial map. The search for these submerged cities is a search for our own lost origins. This recurring theme of sunken worlds forces us to consider the possibility that what we see on land today is only a fraction of what once existed. Are these disparate discoveries isolated coincidences, or do they represent a scattered network of a forgotten global chapter of human history? The common thread of sophisticated construction, often at coastlines, speaks to a long-standing human relationship with the sea, one that was both prosperous and perilous. Each site, whether confirmed or controversial, adds a new piece to a puzzle that is far larger than any single location. The true extent of humanity's ancient achievements may still be waiting to be discovered, not in the dusty archives of libraries, but in the silent depths of the world's oceans and lakes, holding their breath and waiting for us to return. Perhaps nowhere on Earth is the line between ancient myth and modern archaeology more blurred than in the Arabian Sea, off the coast of Gujarat, India. Here, submerged beneath the waves, lie the ruins of a city known as Dwarka, a name that resonates with millions as the legendary Golden Kingdom of Lord Krishna. For millennia, the saga of Dwarka was confined to the sacred verses of the Mahabharata, one of ancient India's great epic poems, describing a magnificent city that was ultimately swallowed by the sea. The text portrays Dwarka as a prosperous, sprawling metropolis built on land reclaimed from the ocean, adorned with brilliant architecture, wide roads, and powerful fortifications. According to the epic, after Krishna's death, the city fell into chaos and was consumed by a massive flood, a tragic end to a divine era. This powerful narrative, long considered a cornerstone of Hindu theology, was treated by mainstream historians as a powerful myth, a symbolic story rather than a historical account. The idea of a technologically advanced city from such an antiquated era existing, let alone being precisely located, seemed beyond the realm of scientific possibility. That perception began to shift dramatically in the 1960s, when the Archaeological Survey of India noted the presence of underwater structures in the coastal area near the modern town of Dwarka. However, it was not until the 1980s that a dedicated and systematic marine archaeological investigation was launched, led by the pioneering efforts of Dr. S.R. Rao, one of India's most respected marine archaeologists. His team from the Marine Archaeology Center of the National Institute of Oceanography embarked on a mission to test a 2,000-year-old legend with the tools of modern science. What they discovered would reignite a global debate about history, faith, and the veracity of ancient texts. The underwater surveys, conducted using sonar, remotely operated vehicles, and teams of skilled divers, began to reveal a startling reality on the seabed. They found evidence of a sprawling settlement spread over a vast area, extending far from the present coastline into the sea. The initial discoveries were compelling. Numerous stone anchors, each with 3 holes, a design not known from any other ancient civilization, suggesting a unique local maritime tradition. Divers also retrieved a variety of artifacts, including pottery shards, semi-precious stone beads, and copper objects, all pointing to a sophisticated and prosperous settlement. The most significant early finds were a series of stone structures that appeared to be man-made, including what looked like the foundations of buildings, walls, and even a protective bastion or jetty. These were not natural formations. Their geometry and consistent orientation indicated deliberate construction. As excavations continued into the 1990s and 2000s, the scope of the underwater city became even more apparent and the evidence more specific. Marine archaeologists identified the remains of 2 distinct settlements, one closer to the present-day coast and another further offshore, in water depths of up to 30 meters. The inner city revealed a complex of structures that have been interpreted as a port facility, complete with a protective wall built of massive stone blocks. Excavators found a large number of the characteristic triangular, 3-holed stone anchors, suggesting this was a bustling harbor that once catered to significant maritime traffic. The discovery of a corroded iron anchor and a copper bell provides further testament to the advanced metallurgical skills of the inhabitants. Perhaps most intriguing are the stone sculptures and a seal found at the site, one of which bears an inscription of animal figures reminiscent of motifs from the Indus Valley civilization. This single artifact alone provides a potential chronological link to one of the world's earliest urban cultures. The structural remains themselves present a compelling argument for intentional construction and advanced planning. Underwater photographs and sonar images show what have been identified as pillars, gateway-like structures, and a series of massive L-shaped blocks forming part of a protective fortification. The stones used in these constructions are not local to the immediate seabed, indicating they were quarried and transported from elsewhere, a monumental undertaking for an ancient society. One of the most significant finds is a large, horseshoe-shaped structure that measures approximately 58 meters by 23 meters, which some archaeologists have interpreted as a part of a temple complex or a public building, its sheer size hinting at a highly organized society. The uniformity of the construction materials and the apparent urban layout of the bastions and walls strongly suggest a single, planned city rather than a collection of haphazardly built structures. The sheer concentration of cultural material and architectural remnants in one location defies any simple explanation as a natural geologic formation. However, the most contentious and critical aspect of the Dwarka discovery is its age, a question that lies at the very heart of the controversy. The archaeological team, led by Dr. Rao, used thermoluminescence dating on pottery shards to assign a date to the underwater structures. The results consistently pointed to a period around 1500 BCE, which places the city in the late Harappan or post-Harappan era of Indian history. This dating is accepted by many mainstream archaeologists who see the ruins as an important port city from that historical period, connected to the regional trade networks of the time. The problem, however, is that this date is significantly more recent than the traditional dating for the events described in the Mahabharata. Many Hindu scholars and traditionalists place the Mahabharata war and the life of Krishna at a much earlier epoch, often cited as being around 3000 BCE or even earlier. This discrepancy of over 1,500 years forms the central divide between the archaeological interpretation and the religious belief. Proponents of the theory that this is the Dwarka of the Mahabharata, including Dr. Rao himself, argue that the evidence points to a clear continuity. They suggest that the underwater structures represent the earliest parts of the city, the legendary Dwarka of Krishna, while the later structures found on land near modern Dwarka represent the rebuilt city. They contend that the archaeological dating may only represent the last major phase of occupation of the ancient city and not its original founding. Supporters point to the unique design of the stone anchors and the layout of the submerged port as features that match descriptions found in ancient Sanskrit texts. They believe it is too great a coincidence to have a massive submerged city of the right description, in the right location, mentioned in the right texts, and not conclude they are one and the same. For them, the discovery is a stunning validation of ancient Indian historical tradition. On the other side of the debate, many mainstream archaeologists and historians urge for caution and adhere strictly to the verifiable scientific data. They argue that while the underwater ruins are undoubtedly a significant archaeological discovery, claiming them as the mythical Dwarka is an interpretative leap not supported by the current evidence. The 1,500-year gap, they suggest, is too vast to be ignored, and the underwater city is more plausibly a prosperous port from the late Indus Valley period that was eventually submerged due to coastal erosion and tectonic activity. Skeptics propose that the connection to the Mahabharata is a case of retroactively fitting a historical site to a pre-existing and beloved myth, a phenomenon seen in other parts of the world. They call for more evidence, such as inscriptions that directly name the city or its ruler, before making such a world-changing claim. Without such direct proof, the submerged city remains, in their view, a remarkable but unnamed historical port. The implications of resolving this debate in favor of the ancient texts are nothing short of revolutionary for our understanding of human history. It would provide tangible, physical evidence for the historical core of one of the world's most read epic poems, transforming religious mythology into documented history. A confirmed dating of 3000 BCE or earlier would necessitate a complete re-evaluation of the timeline for Indian civilization, pushing back the era of large-scale urban planning and sophisticated engineering by over a millennium. It would suggest that a highly advanced maritime civilization existed on India's west coast at a time contemporaneous with the great builders of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Discovering the Dwarka of the Mahabharata would be akin to finding the historical Troy, the real Camelot, or the actual Garden of Eden, a discovery that would bridge the gap between faith and empirical science in an unprecedented way. It stands as a testament to a potential chapter of human achievement that is currently lost to the sea. The search for definitive answers continues, guided by both ancient lore and modern technology. Marine archaeologists are now employing advanced tools like side-scan sonar and sub-bottom profilers to create high-resolution maps of the seabed and peer beneath layers of sediment to uncover what remains hidden. These non-invasive techniques can reveal the true extent of the city and potentially identify structures that are too deep or fragile for divers to explore safely. The challenges are immense, with strong currents, murky water, and the constant threat of sedimentation complicating every phase of the investigation. Every new artifact recovered, every new wall section mapped, adds another piece of data to the complex puzzle of the sunken city. The ocean guards its secrets jealously, and the full truth of Dwarka's identity may still lie buried beneath the sands of time and the tides of the Arabian Sea. Ultimately, the sunken city of Dwarka serves as a profound and powerful symbol of the ongoing quest to understand our past. It is a place where the deeply held spiritual beliefs of millions converge with the methodical, evidence-based world of marine archaeology. Whether one views it as the legendary kingdom of a deity or as the ruins of a forgotten historical port, its significance is undeniable. Dwarka challenges us to keep an open mind about the capabilities of ancient peoples and the reliability of their recorded traditions. It forces a dialogue between different ways of knowing, reminding us that history is not always written in stone, but sometimes in the sacred stories passed down through generations. The submerged stones off the coast of Gujarat continue to ask a silent, compelling question, echoing across the centuries, waiting for a definitive answer that may forever lie just beyond our grasp. The silent questions posed by the submerged stones of Dwarka are not unique, as they resonate powerfully with the enigmas presented by the other sites we have explored. Separated by vast oceans and distinct cultures, the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey, the underwater monument of Yonaguni in Japan, and the sunken ruins off the coast of India challenge the conventional narrative of human history. At first glance, a direct connection seems improbable, as each site appears to be a product of its specific local environment and historical context. One is a subterranean refuge carved from soft volcanic rock, another a seemingly megalithic structure shaped from solid sandstone, and the third a sprawling port city built of stone blocks. Yet when we move beyond the surface details and examine the deeper implications of these discoveries, a series of startling parallels begins to emerge, suggesting a shared thread in humanity's ancient past. The most immediate and profound connection lies in the sheer scale and sophistication of the engineering undertaken at all three locations. Derinkuyu is not a simple cave system, but a multi-leveled metropolis capable of housing 20,000 people, complete with ventilation shafts, wells, and sophisticated security doors. Yonaguni, if artificial, represents a feat of quarrying and construction on a monumental scale, with platform-like structures weighing thousands of tons, seemingly hewn from a single bedrock. Similarly, the underwater city near Dwarka displays a planned urban layout with massive fortification walls, stone piers, and what appears to be a complex infrastructure, all demanding a high degree of social organization and technological prowess. These are not the works of primitive, nascent societies, but of civilizations possessing advanced knowledge of architecture, geology, and logistics. This shared level of advancement, appearing in disparate corners of the globe, forces us to question whether these skills arose independently or were inherited from a common, older source. Perhaps the most compelling unifying theme is the intimate and often tragic relationship these sites share with water and catastrophic environmental change. Derinkuyu was conceived as a refuge from existential threats, which could have included prolonged droughts, invading armies, or perhaps even the climatic turmoil that followed the last ice age. In the cases of Yonaguni and Dwarka, the connection to water is absolute, as both structures now rest deep beneath the waves, victims of a dramatic rise in sea level. This points to a shared historical memory, preserved not in texts but in stone, of a time when the world's coastlines were radically different and cataclysmic flooding was a reality. Could it be that these sites are not isolated anomalies, but rather testimonies to a single global event that erased a chapter of human history from the land, leaving only its submerged remnants? The ocean, which now conceals them, may once have been the highway that connected their creators. This line of inquiry leads directly to one of the most controversial yet enduring hypotheses in alternative archaeology: the theory of a lost civilization. Proponents of this idea suggest that a highly advanced, perhaps global maritime civilization existed during the last ice age, a period known as the Younger Dryas. This hypothetical culture, predating the Sumerians and Egyptians by millennia, would have built its cities and outposts on the fertile, low-lying coastlines that were exposed during the glacial maximum. When the ice sheets began to melt around 12,000 years ago, sea levels rose with terrifying speed, eventually by over 120 meters worldwide, inundating these coastal settlements and forcing their survivors to scatter. According to this theory, Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka are not the works of entirely separate cultures, but rather the surviving fingerprints of this single antediluvian civilization, a few lingering pieces of a much larger lost puzzle. Geological evidence provides a plausible, though not definitive, mechanism for such a catastrophe. The end of the last ice age was not a gentle thaw, but a series of rapid, violent climate shifts, often referred to as meltwater pulse events. During these episodes, immense volumes of water, previously locked away as ice, poured back into the world's oceans, causing sea levels to rise by several meters in just a few decades. Such an event would have been apocalyptic for any civilization living on the coast, effectively wiping their cities from the map. Mainstream geology and archaeology accept this history of sea level rise, but they do not connect it to a lost, advanced civilization. However, for researchers seeking a common origin for sites like Yonaguni and Dwarka, this global inundation provides the perfect explanation for why these impressive structures are now found underwater. It is a scientific fact that the world's coastlines of 12,000 years ago are now submerged, a fact that lends a degree of credibility to the legends of a great flood found in cultures across the planet. If we entertain this hypothesis, it allows us to reinterpret each site through a new lens. The builders of Yonaguni could have been part of this global network, their monument a territorial marker or a ceremonial center that was swallowed by the sea at the end of the Ice Age. The refugees who carved out the immense spaces of Derinkuyu may have been survivors of this catastrophe, preserving their advanced knowledge of engineering and social organization by retreating deep underground. The sunken city of Dwarka, then, could represent one of the last strongholds of this ancient civilization, its memory preserved in the epic poem of the Mahabharata as the glorious kingdom of Krishna, a final gleam of a forgotten golden age before it too was consumed by the ocean. This framework transforms these sites from inexplicable oddities into potential data points in a radical revision of human history, suggesting that our story is far older and more complex than we currently believe. Unsurprisingly, this lost civilization hypothesis is met with fierce skepticism from the mainstream archaeological and scientific community. The primary objection is the complete lack of corroborating evidence for such a global culture. If a technologically advanced civilization had existed 12,000 years ago, one would expect to find a distinct and consistent set of artifacts, tools, writing systems, or genetic markers scattered across the globe. Instead, the archaeological record shows a clear pattern of independent development, with cultures in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa creating unique technologies and social structures suited to their environments. Mainstream experts argue that drawing connections between sites like Derinkuyu and Yonaguni is an act of patternicity, seeing meaningful connections in random or unrelated data. They contend that attributing these structures to a mythical lost civilization is an insult to the ingenuity of the known historical peoples who actually built them. Skeptics also point out that the supposed evidence for artificiality at Yonaguni and the extreme age for Dwarka are far from conclusive and are disputed by the majority of specialists. The geological formation of sandstone can, under the right conditions of fracturing and erosion, create remarkably flat surfaces and sharp angles, which could perfectly explain the Yonaguni structure. Similarly, the dating of Dwarka remains a contentious issue, with a strong possibility that the underwater ruins are indeed a historically important but conventionally dated port city from around 1500 BCE. They argue that proponents of the lost civilization theory cherry-pick data that supports their narrative while ignoring the vast body of evidence that contradicts it. Without a smoking gun, a verifiable artifact with an impossible date, or an inscription that names this lost culture, the theory remains firmly in the realm of speculation. Despite the rigorous opposition, the common origin idea persists because it offers an elegant, if unproven, solution to some of history's most perplexing mysteries. It provides a potential answer for why disparate ancient cultures, such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, and ancient Peruvians, all built pyramids, possessed advanced astronomical knowledge, and had strikingly similar flood myths. The theory suggests these were not coincidences, but cultural memories inherited from a common ancestral source. It also addresses the engineering anomalies of sites like Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka, which seem to represent a technological level that appears suddenly in the archaeological record without a clear period of development. This hypothesis, while lacking direct proof, serves as a powerful catalyst for inquiry, pushing researchers to look for deeper connections and to question established chronologies. Ultimately, the quest to connect the clues between Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka takes us to the very frontier of our understanding of the past. Whether these sites are the scattered remnants of a lost global civilization or simply brilliant achievements of independent, localized cultures, their significance is undeniable. They remind us that the ground beneath our feet and the seabeds around our continents still hold secrets that could fundamentally rewrite the story of humanity. The debate itself between the proponents of a common origin and the defenders of conventional history is a vital part of the scientific process, forcing both sides to refine their arguments and seek better evidence. Each new discovery, whether it supports or refutes the theory, adds a valuable layer to our collective knowledge. The enduring mystery of these incredible places ensures that the search for answers, for the true origins of human ingenuity, will continue to be one of the most compelling adventures of our time. This line of inquiry leads directly to one of the most controversial yet enduring hypotheses in alternative archaeology: the theory of a lost civilization. Proponents of this idea suggest that a highly advanced, perhaps global, maritime civilization existed during the last ice age, a period known as the Younger Dryas. This hypothetical culture, predating the Sumerians and Egyptians by millennia, would have built its cities and outposts on the fertile, low-lying coastlines that were exposed during the glacial maximum. When the ice sheets began to melt around 12,000 years ago, sea levels rose with terrifying speed, eventually by over 120 meters worldwide, inundating these coastal settlements and forcing their survivors to scatter. According to this theory, Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka are not the works of entirely separate cultures, but rather the surviving fingerprints of this single antediluvian civilization, a few lingering pieces of a much larger lost puzzle. Geological evidence provides a plausible, though not definitive, mechanism for such a catastrophe. The end of the last ice age was not a gentle thaw, but a series of rapid, violent climate shifts, often referred to as meltwater pulse events. During these episodes, immense volumes of water, previously locked away as ice, poured back into the world's oceans, causing sea levels to rise by several meters in just a few decades. Such an event would have been apocalyptic for any civilization living on the coast, effectively wiping their cities from the map. Mainstream geology and archaeology accept this history of sea level rise, but they do not connect it to a lost, advanced civilization. However, for researchers seeking a common origin for sites like Yonaguni and Dwarka, this global inundation provides the perfect explanation for why these impressive structures are now found underwater. If we entertain this hypothesis, it allows us to reinterpret each site through a new lens. The builders of Yonaguni could have been part of this global network, their monument a territorial marker or a ceremonial center that was swallowed by the sea at the end of the Ice Age. The refugees who carved out the immense spaces of Derinkuyu may have been survivors of this catastrophe, preserving their advanced knowledge of engineering and social organization by retreating deep underground. The sunken city of Dwarka, then, could represent one of the last strongholds of this ancient civilization, its memory preserved in the epic poem of the Mahabharata as the glorious kingdom of Krishna, a final gleam of a forgotten golden age before it too was consumed by the ocean. This framework transforms these sites from inexplicable oddities into potential data points in a radical revision of human history, suggesting that our story is far older and more complex than we currently believe. Unsurprisingly, this lost civilization hypothesis is met with fierce skepticism from the mainstream archaeological and scientific community. The primary objection is the complete lack of corroborating evidence for such a global culture. If a technologically advanced civilization had existed 12,000 years ago, one would expect to find a distinct and consistent set of artifacts, tools, writing systems, or genetic markers scattered across the globe. Instead, the archaeological record shows a clear pattern of independent development, with cultures in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa creating unique technologies and social structures suited to their environments. Mainstream experts argue that drawing connections between sites like Derinkuyu and Yonaguni is an act of patternicity, seeing meaningful connections in random or unrelated data. Skeptics also point out that the supposed evidence for artificiality at Yonaguni and the extreme age for Dwarka are far from conclusive and are disputed by the majority of specialists. The geological formation of sandstone can, under the right conditions of fracturing and erosion, create remarkably flat surfaces and sharp angles, which could perfectly explain the Yonaguni structure. Similarly, the dating of Dwarka remains a contentious issue, with a strong possibility that the underwater ruins are indeed a historically important, but conventionally dated, port city from around 1500 BCE. They argue that proponents of the lost civilization theory cherry-pick data that supports their narrative, while ignoring the vast body of evidence that contradicts it. Without a smoking gun, a verifiable artifact with an impossible date, or an inscription that names this lost culture, the theory remains firmly in the realm of speculation. Despite the rigorous opposition, the common origin idea persists because it offers an elegant, if unproven, solution to some of history's most perplexing mysteries. It provides a potential answer for why disparate ancient cultures, such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, and ancient Peruvians, all built pyramids, possessed advanced astronomical knowledge, and had strikingly similar flood myths. The theory suggests these were not coincidences, but cultural memories inherited from a common ancestral source. It also addresses the engineering anomalies of sites like Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka, which seem to represent a technological level that appears suddenly in the archaeological record without a clear period of development. This hypothesis, while lacking direct proof, serves as a powerful catalyst for inquiry, pushing researchers to look for deeper connections and to question established chronologies. Ultimately, the quest to connect the clues between Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and Dwarka takes us to the very frontier of our understanding of the past. Whether these sites are the scattered remnants of a lost global civilization, or simply brilliant achievements of independent, localized cultures, their significance is undeniable. They remind us that the ground beneath our feet and the seabeds around our continents still hold secrets that could fundamentally rewrite the story of humanity. The debate itself between the proponents of a common origin and the defenders of conventional history is a vital part of the scientific process, forcing both sides to refine their arguments and seek better evidence. Each new discovery, whether it supports or refutes the theory, adds a valuable layer to our collective knowledge. This reevaluation of history proposes a paradigm shift away from the conventional model of independent linear development. Instead of isolated pockets of innovation, the lost civilization hypothesis posits a single, sophisticated Quote 36 that seeded the globe with foundational knowledge. This antediluvian civilization, flourishing during the last ice age, would have been a global maritime society, with its heartlands now lost beneath the waves. Proponents argue that the sudden appearance of complex societies in the historical record is not a spontaneous leap, but a renaissance of forgotten principles inherited from these earlier ancestors. This idea reframes human prehistory, suggesting that our ancestors were not primitive cave dwellers, but the inheritors of a fallen golden age. The proposed characteristics of this lost civilization are central to the theory, painting a picture of a globally connected people. They were master navigators who charted the world's oceans, establishing a network of observatories and ports on now submerged continental shelves. Their purpose may have been scientific, focused on astronomy and geology, or perhaps economic, managing the distribution of resources. This would explain why the most compelling potential evidence for their existence is found underwater, off the coast of Japan, India, and other regions. The theory suggests that the survivors of the Great Flood brought this knowledge to the hunter-gatherer tribes they encountered, sparking the first great civilizations. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence often cited by proponents is the archaeological site of Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. Dated to a staggering 9,600 BCE, this temple complex predates the invention of agriculture, writing, and the wheel by millennia. Its massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, are carved with intricate reliefs of animals and abstract symbols. The central mystery is how a society of hunter-gatherers, supposedly living in small, mobile groups, could conceive of, organize, and construct such a monumental project. The sheer scale and sophistication of Göbekli Tepe challenge the very timeline of human societal development. According to the lost civilization model, Göbekli Tepe is not a beginning but an ending. It represents a final attempt by survivors of the collapsed global culture to preserve their ancient knowledge for future generations. The builders were not primitives, but highly skilled engineers and priests, trying to encapsulate a legacy of science and spirituality before it vanished forever. The fact that the site was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE is seen by proponents as a conscious act of preservation, an attempt to protect it from the cataclysms or societal upheavals of the era. This interpretation transforms Göbekli Tepe from a mysterious anomaly into a poignant memorial to a forgotten world. Further support is drawn from the analysis of ancient maps, most famously the 16th-century Piri-Reis map. This document, compiled from earlier sources, appears to show the coastline of Antarctica, a continent not officially discovered until the 19th century. More astonishingly, it depicts the landmass without its present-day ice cover, showing mountains and rivers. According to the hypothesis, the original source maps used by Piri-Reis must have been created by a seafaring civilization that existed when Antarctica was free of ice, a condition that last prevailed over 6,000 years ago. This suggests that advanced cartographic knowledge was passed down and copied for millennia, long before the age of European exploration. Beyond physical structures and maps, proponents point to the universal nature of certain myths as cultural memories of a real event. The story of a great flood that destroys the world is one of the most pervasive myths, appearing in the traditions of hundreds of cultures across every continent. Similarly, myths of civilizer gods who arrive from the sea to teach humanity agriculture, law, and astronomy are widespread. Figures like the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, the Egyptian Osiris, and the Sumerian Oannes all share this archetype of a wise, bearded figure emerging from the waters to bring knowledge to a primitive humanity. The theory proposes these are not mere fables, but distorted historical memories of the survivors of the lost civilization. This model also seeks to address the technological leap that seems to occur in the archaeological record around 5,000 years ago. Conventional history shows a slow, gradual development from nomadic life to settled farming villages. Yet in places like Sumer in Mesopotamia and Egypt, we see the sudden emergence of fully formed civilizations with writing, advanced mathematics, monumental architecture, and complex social hierarchies. This rapid jump from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age lacks a clear developmental phase in the evidence. The lost civilization hypothesis fills this gap by suggesting that the leap was not a spontaneous generation of knowledge, but a reintroduction of it. In this view, the survivors of the antediluvian cataclysm became the catalysts for the historical civilizations we know. They integrated with the local populations, sharing their inherited knowledge of engineering, agriculture, and governance. This would explain why the first great civilizations appeared so suddenly and fully formed, as if they were building upon a pre-existing, invisible foundation. The pyramids of Egypt, the precise geometry of the Nazca lines, and the sophisticated astronomy of the Maya could all be seen as echoes of this older, global science. Our history, then, is not a story of a single, linear ascent, but one of recovery and relearning after a great fall. The implications of accepting this hypothesis are truly monumental, extending far beyond academic debate. It would mean that human history is cyclical, characterized by periods of great achievement, followed by catastrophic setbacks. It would imply that a forgotten branch of the human family tree achieved a level of technological and spiritual sophistication that rivals and perhaps even surpassed our own. Most profoundly, it would connect all of humanity in a much deeper way, suggesting we are all inheritors of a common, lost legacy. Our potential, then, is not something we are just now discovering, but something we are reclaiming from a distant, forgotten past. Yet, for all its compelling narrative power, the theory remains on the fringes of accepted science, and for very good reason. The burden of proof in archaeology and history is immense, demanding verifiable, repeatable, and unambiguous evidence. While sites like Yonaguni and Göbekli Tepe are genuinely mysterious, the evidence is far from conclusive and is open to multiple interpretations. To rewrite human history based on underwater rock formations and ancient myths is a step that mainstream science is not, and perhaps should not, be willing to take without more substantial proof. The question, therefore, becomes not just what we believe, but what constitutes the very nature of evidence itself in the quest to understand our collective origins. The question of what constitutes valid evidence lies at the very heart of the divide between conventional archaeology and more speculative theories. For a scientist, evidence is not merely an intriguing artifact or a compelling pattern. It must be part of a verifiable, repeatable, and contextual framework. This framework is built upon the scientific method, a rigorous process of observation, hypothesis, experimentation, and peer review designed to minimize bias and error. An isolated discovery, no matter how mysterious, is considered an anomaly until it can be integrated into this larger, self-correcting system. The burden of proof, therefore, rests squarely on those making the extraordinary claim, not on the established scientific community to disprove it. This foundational principle ensures that the foundation of our understanding of the past is built on solid ground, not on shifting sands of speculation. This burden of proof is exceptionally high when a hypothesis threatens to overturn a century of cumulative research, as the lost civilization hypothesis undoubtedly does. The claim that a technologically advanced global society existed over 12,000 years ago is extraordinary, and as such, it demands evidence that is not just suggestive but conclusive. Mainstream archaeology points out that such a civilization would have left behind an immense and undeniable footprint, far beyond a few submerged rock formations. We would expect to find widespread, identifiable artifacts, advanced metallurgical remnants, distinct genetic markers in human populations, and clear linguistic roots scattered across the globe. The absence of this ubiquitous, high-quality evidence is, for most scientists, the most powerful argument against the theory. Proponents might argue the evidence is lost to the sea, but this is an argument from ignorance, a claim that something is true because it has not been proven false, which is a logical fallacy, not scientific proof. A core tool in the scientific toolkit for evaluating competing claims is the principle of parsimony, more commonly known as Occam's razor. This principle states that when faced with competing explanations, the one that makes the fewest assumptions is usually the correct one. In the case of the Yonaguni monument, the two primary hypotheses are that it is a man-made structure carved by an unknown civilization, or that it is a natural formation of sandstone modified by strong ocean currents. The natural formation explanation requires only the known processes of geology and marine erosion. The man-made hypothesis, in contrast, requires the assumption of a lost, technologically advanced civilization, for which there is no other direct evidence. Therefore, until unequivocal proof of human intervention, such as indisputable tool marks or associated artifacts, is found, science must default to the simpler, geologically sound explanation. Context is the single most valuable asset an archaeologist can have, and its absence is the primary reason many, quote, fail to gain scientific acceptance. When an artifact is discovered in situ, meaning in its original undisturbed stratigraphic layer, its relationship to other finds and its age can be determined with a high degree of confidence. However, many of the objects cited by alternative theorists as proof of lost technologies were found by amateurs, purchased on the antiquities market, or lack any clear provenance. Without knowing precisely where and how an object was found, it is impossible to rule out modern forgery, misinterpretation of a natural object, or incorrect dating. This is why the controlled, meticulous excavation of a professional archaeological dig is so critical. It preserves the precious context that transforms a simple object into a piece of verifiable history. The human mind is a pattern-seeking machine, a trait that has served us well, but also makes us vulnerable to a cognitive bias known as confirmation bias. This is the tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs, while giving disproportionately less consideration to alternative possibilities. For someone already convinced of a lost civilization, a vaguely rectangular rock formation becomes a temple foundation, and a natural discoloration on stone becomes the remnant of a tool mark. Mainstream science, through its system of peer review and methodological naturalism, is designed specifically to counteract these very human biases. The skepticism is not personal animosity, It is a necessary institutional guardrail that protects the integrity of the discipline from wishful thinking and subjective interpretation. When geologists like Robert Schoch of Boston University, who is well known for his controversial work on the weathering of the Great Sphinx, examined the Yonaguni site, they concluded that its major features are consistent with natural geological processes. The region's sandstone bedrock tends to fracture along straight, perpendicular lines, creating sharp right angles and flat platforms. Over thousands of years, powerful tidal currents in the region have scoured and eroded these formations, smoothing some surfaces while leaving others stark and angular. What appears to be a grand staircase or a paved road could simply be the result of this differential erosion along natural fault lines. While Dr. Schoch remains open to the possibility of some human modification, he maintains that the bulk of the monument is unequivocally the work of nature, a conclusion shared by the majority of marine geologists who have studied the site. Furthermore, the dating of the Yonaguni structure presents an insurmountable problem for the man-made hypothesis. If it were an artificial creation, establishing when it was built would be crucial. To do this, archaeologists would need to find organic material, such as charcoal from a fire or bone fragments, trapped within the construction layers of the site itself. Such material could then be subjected to radiocarbon dating to provide a reliable age. To date, no such datable artifacts have been found in situ at Yonaguni. Speculation that it was built during the last ice age when sea levels were lower is just that, speculation. Without archaeological context and datable evidence, assigning any age to the structure, let alone an age of 10,000 years or more, is scientifically untenable. Göbekli Tepe, while legitimately shattering previous assumptions about the capabilities of hunter-gatherers, does not require the invocation of a lost civilization to be explained. Its discovery forces a re-evaluation of the timeline, suggesting that large-scale communal construction and complex symbolic thought may have preceded, rather than resulted from, the advent of agriculture. This is a revolutionary finding, but it remains an evolution within the established paradigm of human development in the ancient Near East. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were not global seafarers. They were likely local peoples who developed a unique culture. The site is a testament to the ingenuity of early Holocene humans, not a ghostly echo of a forgotten, technologically superior world. Similarly, the Piri Reis map, while a fascinating historical document, has been subjected to extensive cartographic analysis that offers more mundane explanations. The coastline that some interpret as Antarctica could, and most experts believe does, represent the southern tip of South America, distorted and extended eastward, a common feature in early Portolan charts. The idea that the map shows an ice-free Antarctica relies on a specific interpretation that ignores other, more plausible geographical identifications. Maps from this era were often compilations of many older sources, some of which were already inaccurate or based on hearsay. Attributing the cartographic data to a hyper-advanced lost civilization is a far greater leap of faith than accepting it as a remarkable, yet flawed, artifact of 16th-century geographical knowledge. Finally, the treatment of myth and legend as historical fact is a point of major divergence between speculative theorists and academic historians and anthropologists. While scholars recognize the immense cultural value of myths, they analyze them as products of the human psyche and reflections of societal values, not as journalistic records of actual events. The ubiquity of flood myths, for example, is better explained by the fact that many early civilizations developed in river valleys prone to catastrophic flooding, and that such an event would become a powerful and formative cultural memory. To extrapolate from these universal archetypes to a single, literal, global cataclysm is to ignore the nuanced and complex ways in which stories are created, transmitted, and adapted by different cultures over millennia. A fundamental requirement for any scientific hypothesis is that it must be falsifiable, meaning there must be some conceivable observation or experiment that could prove it false. The lost civilization hypothesis, as often presented by its proponents, is structured in a way that makes it virtually unfalsifiable. Any lack of evidence on land can be explained by it being underwater. Any lack of artifacts at a submerged site can be explained by the inhabitants taking everything with them, or the sea erasing all traces. This quote 42 approach places the theory outside the realm of science, as a theory that cannot be proven wrong can also never be proven right. It becomes a matter of faith, not a testable explanation of the past. The process of peer review, which proponents sometimes see as a conspiracy to suppress new ideas, is in fact the primary mechanism that ensures scientific rigor and validity. When a researcher makes a radical claim, their work is submitted to a panel of other experts in the same field who scrutinize the methodology, the data, and the conclusions. This process is designed to be critical, identifying flaws in reasoning, potential biases, and alternative interpretations that the original researcher may have missed. While it can be a slow and difficult process, it is this very gatekeeping function that protects the integrity of the scientific record from being flooded with unverified claims and sensational but baseless theories. Ultimately, the hesitation of the scientific community is not born from closed-mindedness or a dogmatic attachment to existing paradigms, but from a deep commitment to methodological rigor and evidentiary standards. Science is, by its very nature, revolutionary, ready to overturn its own most cherished theories when presented with compelling evidence. The story of plate tectonics, or the discovery of DNA, demonstrates this capacity for radical change. However, the evidence for such a shift must be robust, cross-disciplinary, and able to withstand the most intense skeptical scrutiny. Until such proof emerges, the story of a lost global civilization remains a captivating narrative, a powerful modern myth, but it does not yet meet the burden of proof required to rewrite the history of humanity. The quest for our origins continues, guided by the unyielding principle that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The quest for our origins continues, a journey not just across continents, but through the very bedrock of our beliefs. This exploration is defined by a constant tension between the rigorous demands of evidence and the powerful human allure of a grander, more mysterious past. Sites like Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and the submerged ruins off Dwarka serve not as final answers, but as profound provocations. They challenge the comfortable narratives we have constructed, whispering of forgotten chapters in the human story. And in that whisper lies the true engine of archaeological discovery. Whether the monumental steps of Yonaguni are carved by a human hand or by the inexorable forces of nature, their existence forces us to reconsider the scale of geological time. The sheer engineering audacity of Derinkuyu compels us to acknowledge a level of social organization and technological skill in ancient Anatolia that is nothing short of breathtaking. The potential discovery of a sunken city at Dwarka blurs the line between sacred scripture and historical reality, prompting a re-examination of ancient texts. These places become intellectual laboratories where our theories are tested and our understanding is stretched. They remind us that history is not a static, settled account, but a dynamic, evolving conversation with the past. Perhaps the greatest contribution of these enigmatic sites is the mystery itself. Mystery fuels curiosity, and curiosity is the fundamental driver of all scientific inquiry. Without the unanswered questions posed by Yonaguni's sharp angles or Derinkuyu's hidden doors, would we be as motivated to develop new surveying technologies? The absence of a definitive answer creates a space for debate, for speculation, and for the passionate arguments that push the boundaries of knowledge forward. It is in the struggle to understand the unknown that we sharpen the tools of our own intellect. This deep fascination with lost worlds speaks to a fundamental aspect of the human condition. We are a species defined by memory and story, constantly seeking to understand our place within a larger continuum. The idea of a lost civilization, a golden age swallowed by the sea, is a powerful archetypal myth that resonates across cultures. It reflects our anxieties about our own civilization's fragility and our hopes for a more enlightened past. In searching for them, we are, in a way, searching for a deeper understanding of ourselves. Today, this quest is being revolutionized by a new generation of technological tools that are fundamentally changing the field of archaeology. In the jungles of Guatemala, LiDAR technology has peeled back the forest canopy to reveal hundreds of thousands of previously unknown Mayan structures, forcing a complete reevaluation of their population and social complexity. Advanced sub-bottom profilers and autonomous underwater vehicles are now mapping the seafloor with a clarity once thought impossible, promising to reveal targets for divers that were invisible to earlier sonar. DNA analysis of ancient human remains is rewriting the story of human migration, showing complex patterns of movement and interaction that defy simple models. These tools do not prove the lost civilization hypothesis, but they are undeniably expanding the known map of the ancient world in dramatic ways. This technological revolution also forces us to question our very definition of what constitutes an advanced or civilized society. For decades, the paradigm was centered on monumental stone architecture, written language, and large-scale urban centers. But what of sophisticated cultures that built with wood or earth, or whose social complexity was expressed through networks rather than cities? The traces of such societies would be far more subtle, easily overlooked, and rapidly erased by time. The story of human ingenuity may be far more diverse and widespread than our traditional archaeological record suggests, with intelligence manifesting in myriad ways we are only now beginning to detect. The world's oceans represent the last great unexplored frontier on our planet, holding secrets that have been submerged for millennia. At the height of the last ice age, around 20,000 years ago, sea levels were over 100 meters lower than they are today. This exposed vast tracts of coastal plain, the very land that would have been most desirable for settlement by early human populations. It is statistically probable, almost a certainty, that countless prehistoric sites, villages, and even towns from this era now lie beneath the waves. The potential for discovery is immense, a hidden archive of human history waiting to be opened. The ongoing debate between mainstream archaeology and proponents of alternative theories should not be seen as a hostile conflict, but as a necessary dialectic. The methodological caution of the academic community provides the essential guardrails of evidence and peer review, ensuring that our understanding of the past is built on a solid foundation. The imaginative leap of the speculative theorist, meanwhile, serves to ask the what-if questions, to challenge orthodoxy, and to look in places where no one else thought to look. One provides rigor, the other provides vision, and progress is often found in the dynamic space between these two poles. Both are driven by a shared passion for uncovering the truth. So what does the future hold for these enduring mysteries? It is possible that one day, a deep-sea drone will scan the seabed off the coast of Japan and find an unequivocal tool mark, a carved inscription, or an artifact trapped within the Yonaguni Formation. Perhaps future excavations in Dwarka will uncover pottery with a clear stratigraphic context that can be reliably dated, confirming its ancient origins. Or maybe, just maybe, LiDAR surveys of the Mediterranean seabed will one day reveal the geometric street patterns of a truly sunken city from a time we thought impossible. The possibility of such a discovery is the ultimate prize that keeps the search alive. Yet it is equally possible that the answers will be more nuanced and, in their own way, just as profound. We may find that Yonaguni is a unique natural formation that was venerated and modified by ancient peoples, blurring the line between the natural and the artificial world. We may learn that the builders of Derinkuyu were not part of a global network, but were simply brilliant local innovators whose achievements were born of specific regional pressures. The ultimate lesson might be that the ingenuity of our ancestors was far more localized, more diverse, and more creatively adaptive than we ever gave them credit for. Ultimately, the search for lost cities and forgotten civilizations is a reflection of our own journey. We are a species capable of both constructing incredible, enduring monuments and of forgetting our own history with shocking ease. We build wonders, and then we allow them to crumble. We write our stories, and then we lose the ability to read them. These submerged and subterranean enigmas are a powerful reminder of the cyclical nature of human achievement and oblivion. They are a testament to the grandeur of our potential and a warning about the impermanence of all our works. The deep past, therefore, is not merely a collection of artifacts and ruins to be catalogued and dated. It is a vast, dark mirror reflecting back at us, showing us who we were, and by extension, who we might become. The quest to understand Derinkuyu, Yonaguni, and all the other silent sentinels of history is more than an academic exercise. It is a pilgrimage to the very roots of human consciousness, an attempt to understand the spark that first drove us to carve our existence into the rock and to reach for the stars. The story is still being written, and its most thrilling chapters may yet lie buried, far beneath the sand and the sea.